first part of the anime begins by showing a large kingdom called Fjord, which is inhabited by about 17 million people, where almost all of the population can use magic power, even making magic as an item that can be traded like merchandise in general. People who make a living using their magical powers are usually referred to as the wizards, and these wizards belong to many different guilds and accept jobs brought to them. There are many guilds in this kingdom, and there's a certain wizard guild in a certain town. A guild from which countless legends were once born. Its name is Fairy Tail. The scene then switches and shows a young man named Natsu Dragneel who has just arrived in a port city called Harjian. Natsu, who took the train to reach the city, seemed to have motion sickness, so he continued to feel nauseous and his body became weak. On his journey, Natsu is always accompanied by Happy, a cat who can talk. On the other side of town, a girl named Lucy Heartfilia is visiting a magic shop, where she becomes very surprised that it is the only magic shop in Harjian City. The shop owner said that most of the residents of Harjian City made a living by catching fish, and they very rarely used magic power in their daily life. Lucy then asks about the powerful geikis she was looking for, and the owner offers the white doggy geikis for 20,000 jewels to her. Because the price is quite expensive, Lucy also tries to use her feminine charm to seduce the shop owner to sell the geikis at a lower price. However, the shop owner only reduces the price by 1,000 jewels, so she became very irritated. Lucy, who was grumbling along the way, suddenly stops in her tracks when she sees people crowding somewhere and hears about a great magician named Salamander who happened to be in the city. Lucy seemed to know Salamander, who was said to have fire magic that couldn't be bought in any magic shop. And because she had great admiration for the mages who possessed fire magic, which was said to be very rare, Lucy rushed into the crowd to see Salamander in person. Elsewhere, Natsu asks Happy to double-check that the salamander they're looking for is Igneel. Happy says that Igneel is the only fire dragon he knows, and believes that Salamander is the fire dragon they are looking for. Not long after, Natsu and Happy see a crowd of people shouting Salamander's name, so they rush over there. On the other hand, Lucy, who is in the middle of the crowd admiring Salamander's figure, realizes that something strange had happened to her body because she feels that she is very infatuated with a man named Salamander in front of her. At the same time, Natsu, who arrives there and calls him Igneel, suddenly feels disappointed because the salamander in front of him is not the salamander he was looking for, so Natsu just left. Salamander fans who think that Natsu has been rude to the great wizard who is their idol then beat up Natsu and tell him to apologize to Salamander. Lucy, who finally found out that Salamander had used the magical charms on everyone, including herself, then helps Natsu and thank him because he had indirectly broken the magical charms that affected her. As an expression of gratitude, Lucy then treats Natsu and Happy to lunch at a restaurant. While they're eating, Lucy explains that the man claiming to be Salamander used the charm spell ring that can attract people even against their will. She then tells Natsu and Happy that she is also a magician, but hasn't joined the Wizard Guild yet. Natsu tells Lucy that the reason he came to Harjian City was that he heard the news about Salamander. However, after finally meeting Salamander in the city, he was disappointed because the salamander he met was not the salamander he had been looking for. After all, the real salamander or Igneel was the actual fire dragon. Lucy is very surprised to hear that because magical creatures like dragons are very rare creatures that are hardly ever seen. After lunch, Natsu and Happy also thank Lucy because she had treated them. Afterward, Lucy, who is reading the wizarding magazine, Sorcerer Weekly, seems so impressed with a female sorcerer named Marajane who is said to be a member of the Fairy Tail Guild, so she wants to join the Fairy Tail Guild. Lucy is then surprised by the appearance of Salamander, who invites her to the party on his boat tonight. Lucy, who already knew about the tricks used by Salamander to lure women, immediately rejects the invitation outright. However, after Salamander said that he is a member of Fairy Tail and is willing to help her join Fairy Tail, she finally agrees to attend the party. In the evening, Natsu and Happy, who are relaxing while enjoying the scenery, overhear some women talking that Salamander is a member of the Fairy Tail Guild. Hearing the name Fairy Tail, Natsu's face suddenly turns serious and looks fiercely at the ship where Salamander is having a party. Meanwhile, Lucy, who was already on the ship, immediately realizes that Salamander had tricked her, even trying to paralyze her with a magic spell that could put her to sleep. Salamander only wants to trap Lucy because he intends to sell her and also several women who had been drugged by Salamander's henchmen. Lucy tries to fight back by taking out her geikis. However, Salamander manages to seize the geikis and throw them into the sea, then orders his men to capture Lucy. Shortly afterward, Natsu arrives with Happy, who can fly because he has a pair of wings. Happy immediately took Lucy away from the ship to save her, while Natsu, who had seasickness, caught his guard, so he was badly beaten by Salamander's men. Since Happy is unable to use his wings for a long time, the two of them end up falling into the sea, and Lucy rushes to find her geikis. After finding her geikis, Lucy uses a key to open the gate of Waterbearer and summons the celestial spirit named Aquarius. Lucy then asks Aquarius to throw Salamander's ship back to land. With her great magical power that can control water, Aquarius can easily throw Salamander's ship, while bringing Lucy and Happy back to land. Natsu, who has recovered from seasickness, then stands on the ship that has overturned and shows his true identity as a member of the Fairy Tail Guild with the guild symbol engraved on his arm. Natsu angrily says that he hates people who claim to be members of the Fairy Tail Guild, especially bad people like Salamander, whose real name is Bora. Happy tells Lucy that Bora is a wizard who has been expelled by the wizard guild named Titan Nose. Bora then uses fire magic to attack Natsu, but the attack doesn't work at all against him, who instead devours the fire. Natsu then uses his magic power that can spit fire from his mouth like a dragon. Meanwhile, Lucy is surprised to see Natsu, who turned out to be the real Salamander, a great magician who has tremendous fire magic. Happy explains to Lucy that Natsu has mastered ancient magic that can make him have abilities like the fire dragons, and was originally used to defeat the dragons, so it was called the Dragon Slayer magic, and the one who taught it to Natsu was Igneal. In the end, Natsu manages to defeat Bora, along with the Fjord soldiers that arrive there to catch the people who had caused riots in the city, including Natsu. Not wanting to be caught, Natsu rushes to escape with Happy and takes Lucy to come with him because she wants to join the Fairy Tail Guild. The scene then switches and shows the Magic Council, Erza, who is holding a meeting to discuss the incident in Hargian City, which again involves members of the Fairy Tail Guild. Even though some magicians from the Magic Council think that the Fairy Tail Guild is just a bunch of idiots, they also don't deny that the Fairy Tail Guild members have great magical powers and should not be underestimated. The next day, Natsu takes Lucy to Fairy Tail's headquarters, which turns out to be very crowded, and the frequent fights between the guild members are common. In that place, Lucy meets a Fairy Tail Guild member named Grey Fullbuster, who had a shirtless habit and seems to be impatient to fight with Natsu. Besides Grey, Lucy also meets a beautiful woman named Kana Alberona, who is the Fairy Tail's heaviest drinker. Lucy is very surprised to see Kana's habit of drinking alcohol straight from a barrel. After that, Lucy is surprised by the appearance of Elfman, a muscle-brain wizard who solves everything with his fists. However, when Elfman is about to break up Natsu and Grey's fight, he is overthrown by the two of them first. Lucy then meets a young man named Loki, one of the top ranked on the most desired wizard bachelor list. However, because Loki's attitude was very strange, and he was also known to be a playboy, she immediately becomes annoyed with him. Lucy thinks that everyone in Fairy Tail is very strange and abnormal until she finally meets Mira Jane, a female sorcerer whose picture is posted in the Wizarding magazine, who turns out to be working at Fairy Tail as a waitress. Mira Jane greets Lucy warmly and says that fighting is normal in Fairy Tail. The fight finally stopped after a giant black shadow that resembles a human appears and orders everyone to stop fighting. The figure is none other than Makarov, the master of the Fairy Tail Guild, who turns out to have the true form of an old man with a dwarf body, who greets Lucy politely. Makarov then speaks in front of the Fairy Tail Guild members while showing the pile of documents he had received from the Magic Council, all of which contained complaints that the Fairy Tail Guild members caused damage every time they fought. Makarov looks angry at first, but he paid no heed to the warning from the Magic Council, which he thought was just a bunch of idiots. Makarov then delivers a very encouraging speech for the magicians in the Fairy Tail Guild, so that they follow their hearts and act without thinking about what other people say, who only want to limit their ability to be stronger in the future. After hearing the master's speech, everyone cheered with joy, and the situation calmed down again. Lucy is very happy after getting a tattoo, which is a sign that she is now an official member of the Fairy Tail Guild. On the other hand, Natsu is seen observing some of the requests posted on the request board and decides to take a job that pays quite a lot. At the same time, a boy named Romeo enters Fairy Tail's headquarters and asks Makarov about the whereabouts of his father, who hasn't returned. Romeo's father turned out to be a wizard from the Fairy Tail Guild named Makao, who did a job on Mount Hakobe a week ago and hasn't returned until now. Because Mount Hakobe is not too far from that place, Romeo asks Makarov and the other magicians to find his father's whereabouts. Hearing this, Makarov becomes irritated and tells Romeo to go home and wait for his father at home. But then, Natsu decides to help Romeo find his father and goes to Mount Hakobe to find out where Makao is. Lucy looks surprised by Natsu's attitude, but Makarov chooses to let Natsu do whatever he wants. Mira Jane then tells Lucy that Natsu might see a part of his past self in Romeo, so he decides to help Romeo. Furthermore, Mira Jane reveals that Natsu had also been abandoned by his father, who left and never returned. Even though it was only his adoptive father, Natsu felt so lost that he continued to search for his whereabouts to this day. Natsu's adoptive father is none other than Igneal, the fire dragon who found and took care of Natsu as a child and taught him many things, including magic. After learning a little about Natsu's past, Lucy decides to accompany Natsu on his mission to find Romeo's father. They began their journey by riding a horse-drawn carriage that took them to Mount Hakobe. Because the coachman refuses to continue their journey in the middle of a blizzard, Natsu, Lucy, and Happy are forced to continue their journey on foot. Because the weather is very cold, Lucy then uses her gate keys to summon a clock large enough so she can enter it to dispel the cold air that can freeze her body. Not long after, a monster that resembled a great ape appears and immediately takes Lucy away from there. Natsu immediately learns that the monster is Vulcan, a savage monster resident of Mount Hakobe who should have been killed by Makao, who accepted the job to kill Vulcan. Natsu tries to help Lucy and asks about the whereabouts of Makao to the monster, but Vulcan instead drops Natsu into the abyss. Having no other choice, Lucy then uses her gate keys to summon the celestial spirit named Taurus to fight Vulcan. However, Vulcan can easily defeat Taurus. At the same time, Natsu arrives at Vulcan's hiding cave after Happy has saved him. Natsu then gets into a fierce battle with Vulcan until he finally manages to defeat Vulcan. But then, Vulcan suddenly turned into Makao. Upon seeing that, Happy explains to Natsu and Lucy that Vulcan has used a magic spell to take over Makao's body. Vulcan turns out to be a monster that lives by stealing someone's body and taking over that person's body. Judging from the number of injuries Makao had sustained, Happy estimates that Makao had fought quite fiercely with Vulcan before the monster took over his body. When he finally came to his senses, Makao reveals that he had defeated 19 Vulcans, but that the only Vulcan left had taken over his body. Natsu says that Makao is great for defeating the 19 monsters alone and then invites him to go home and meet Romeo. They finally go home, and Romeo looks so happy because he can finally meet his father again. Makao then apologizes to Romeo for making him so worried. After that, Romeo also thanked Natsu, Lucy, and Happy because they had saved his father. A few days later, Lucy, who is now a member of the Fairy Tail Guild, decides to move to the city of Magnolia, which is the location of Fairy Tail's headquarters. In that city, Lucy rented a fairly large house for 70,000 jewels and seemed satisfied with all the facilities and goods in the house. One day, Lucy, who had just finished taking a shower, was surprised by the appearance of Natsu and Happy at her house. Natsu looks curious about the new house occupied by Lucy, as well as some of her belongings, including a stack of documents that seem very important and confidential, because Lucy immediately took them from Natsu before he could read them. After that, Happy asks about the gate keys owned by Lucy. She explains about the silver keys which she usually buys from the magic shop because these keys are indeed traded. However, it is different from the golden keys, which are very rare because they can be used to summon the celestial spirits of the 12 zodiacs. For now, Lucy only has 3 golden keys: Aquarius, Taurus, and Cancer. Because they're talking about the gate keys, Lucy remembers that she had not made a contract with the white dog keys that she bought in Hargian City. Therefore, she then summons the spirit of the key, which was in the form of an adorable little creature which is later named Plu. After that, Natsu tells his purpose in coming to Lucy's house, that he wants to invite Lucy to join his team. Although all Fairy Tail Guild members are their comrades, they usually form small groups to cooperate in carrying out a mission or doing certain jobs. Without thinking, Lucy immediately agrees to Natsu's request to join his team. Natsu then tells Lucy that he has chosen a job from the request board, and then shows it to her. They would do a job in the city of Shiratsume in exchange for 200,000 jewels. However, after reading the details of the job, Lucy is surprised because the job involved a perverted man named Duke Everloo who was looking for a blonde maid. Natsu actually from the beginning had planned to convince Lucy to join his team because she has naturally blonde hair, so it would be easier for Lucy to infiltrate Duke Everloo's residence to destroy a book, according to the request written on the sheet. Meanwhile, at the Fairy Tail Guild headquarters, Makarov informs the guild members that the job taken by Natsu and Lucy does not seem as easy as imagined, because the reward for the job has been increased to 2 million jewels. Meanwhile, Lucy, who was already on her way to Shiratsume City by riding a horse carriage, then asks Natsu about the reason he recruited her into his team. Natsu openly says that Lucy is a good person, although she's a bit freaky. Arriving in the town of Shiratsume, Lucy rushes to the clothing store to buy a maid uniform to make her disguise perfect. After that, Natsu and his companions go to the house of a man named Kabi Melon who is a client who hired them. Kabi tells them that the reward for the work has been increased to 2 million jewels and asks them to destroy the book known to be called Daybreak. Lucy immediately started the plan by visiting Duke Everloo's residence to apply for a job as a maid. Surprisingly, the Duke rejects her because he thinks she is not pretty enough to be his servant. Because Lucy's plan has failed, they are finally forced to sneak into the Duke's house to find the whereabouts of the book. But their actions were caught by the Duke's maids who immediately launched an attack on them. However, Natsu manages to defeat all the servants, and they continue their search until they finally arrive at a library. Not long after, Natsu finally found the Daybreak book they were looking for. However, when Natsu was about to burn it, Lucy immediately stops him because the book was written by Kemuza Leon, a magician who is also a famous author. Because Lucy is a big fan of Leon's works, she tries to persuade Natsu not to burn it. But then, Duke Everloo emerges from the ground and catches Natsu and his companions who stole his book. Despite calling Daybreak an ugly and worthless book, the Duke refused to give it to Lucy or anyone else, because what had been his would remain his. Duke Everloo then summons the Vanished Brothers from the Southern Wolves Guild and orders them to kill Natsu and his companions. At the same time, Lucy, who reads the contents of the book, seems to have found something important, so she asked Natsu to fight them alone, while she would examine the contents of the book, and hurriedly left the place. Natsu is immediately involved in a fierce battle against the Vanished Brothers, which is quite difficult for him, although in the end, he manages to defeat the Vanished Brothers quite easily. On the other hand, Lucy, who reads the book Daybreak using magic glasses so that she can read and understand the contents of a book in a short time, finally found the secret hidden in the book. However, Duke Everloo appears behind her and grabs Lucy's arm, forcing her to reveal the secret of the book. Lucy refuses to tell the secret to the Duke, who she thinks is a literary criminal for forcing Leon to write a book that makes Duke Everloo as the main character. Not long after, Happy arrives and immediately rescues Lucy from Duke Everloo's clutches, so that now things had turned around. Lucy and Happy were surprised by Duke Everloo, who turned out to be a magician, and launches an attack on Lucy while urging her to reveal the book's secret. But she persists in defending the book and calls the Duke a cruel person. Lucy even finds out that Duke Everloo has imprisoned Leon for 3 years, and threatened his family just because he was obsessed with bringing down Leon's pride. Lucy found out all these things after reading Daybreak with a special spell, because Leon used a certain spell to prevent Duke Everloo from knowing the secrets hidden in the book. Presuming that Leon had found out about the dirty business he was running and had written it down in the book Daybreak, Duke Everloo suddenly became so anxious that he tries to snatch the book from Lucy. But she takes out one of her golden keys to summon the celestial spirit named Cancer. Not wanting his fraud to be exposed, Duke Everloo then uses his magic power to summon the celestial spirit named Virgo, who turns out to be one of his maidservants. Lucy and Happy look surprised because they had no idea that the Duke is a celestial wizard, like Lucy. However, what surprised them the most is the presence of Natsu, who is holding on to Virgo. Natsu says that he initially wants to find Lucy and Happy, but because Virgo is acting weird, he follows her and has miraculously come to that place with Virgo. Lucy immediately orders Natsu to attack Virgo, and a fierce battle ensued between them. Natsu then uses the dragon's fire burst technique to defeat Virgo, but the attack instead created such a powerful explosion that it toppled Duke Everloo's residence in an instant. Luckily, Natsu, Lucy, and Happy managed to get out of the place before being hit by the rubble. After that, Natsu and his companions meet their client, where Lucy then hands the book to Kabi and asks Kabi to destroy the book himself. Surprisingly, Kabi turns out to be the son of Leon, so he can't destroy Daybreak, which was his father's last work before he died a few years ago. The scene then switches to the past and shows Leon, who finally returns home after being imprisoned for 3 years and being forced to write a book about a bad person like Duke Everloo, which greatly tarnishes Leon's reputation and self-esteem as a famous writer who only writes about great heroes and wizards. Kabi told that his father decided to end his career as a writer after cutting his hand until he finally died. Even though he knows his father's suffering while being held captive by the Duke, Kabi is so angry that his father prefers to finish the book and receive payments from the Duke, so Kabi hates his father. However, over time, the hatred in Kabi's heart turned into the biggest regret of his life. Therefore, Kabi also intends to make amends and save his father's pride by destroying the book. Upon hearing that, Natsu tries to stop Kabi from destroying his father's book, but Lucy stops him and leaves Kabi to decide for himself whether to destroy the book or keep it. Kabi still intends to destroy the book. But then, something strange happened when the book suddenly lit up. Lucy reveals that Leon, whose real name is Zekuo Melon, has used a special spell when writing Daybreak, so the book magically changed its title to Dear Kabi, and the entire contents changed and told about his beloved son, Kabi. Lucy also told Kabi that the reason Kemu decided to stop writing was that he had written Dear Kabi, which is his best work. Knowing this, Kabi decides to keep the book and makes the book his most precious thing. Because they did not succeed in completing the mission, Natsu chose to leave and did not take the reward promised by Kabi. Natsu knows from the start that Kabi is not a rich man and only pretends to be rich, so the magicians are willing to help him. Natsu was able to know this because he had a very sharp sense of smell, so he could distinguish the smell of Kabi and his wife, which was very different from the smell in the luxurious house. Long story short, Natsu and his companions then decide to take a shortcut to return to Magnolia City without having to ride a horse carriage. On the way, they accidentally met Gray, who also took the shortcut after finishing his work in another city. Gray tells Lucy that the shortcut is the fastest route to Magnolia City. While they're resting, suddenly an explosion occurs and traps them in the dune. Afterward, Natsu immediately realizes that Happy had disappeared. Happy had been captured and was about to be eaten for lunch by a group of magicians who had attacked them. Natsu, who has a very sharp sense of smell, can easily find the location of Happy's whereabouts, and they immediately get into a fight with the group of magicians. Natsu and Gray can easily defeat the magicians and tie them to a big tree. Lucy hears one of them say about lullaby. But before she could ask any further about what lullaby was, someone suddenly attacks the group of magicians and buries them alive in the ground. At the same time, a young woman with red hair and wearing armor, who was carrying a giant monster horn, is about to head to the Fairy Tail Guild headquarters in Magnolia City. The next day, Lucy is looking at the request board at Fairy Tail's headquarters and is about to take a job that could make money because she had to pay the rent soon. Mira Jane then tells Lucy that Makarov is attending a meeting of the guild masters, so that Lucy could tell her if she wanted to take a job, and later she would manage the document, which is usually done by the master of the guild. On the other hand, Natsu and Gray seem to be fighting as usual. Even though they often fight and even end up in fights, Natsu and Gray are very close, so the other Fairy Tail Guild members choose to let them fight each other, rather than exhausting their energy to separate them. At the same time, Loki, who had just arrived at Fairy Tail's headquarters, then warns everyone that Erza Scarlet had returned. Hearing Erza's name mentioned, everyone immediately fell silent, as well as Natsu and Gray, who then stopped fighting. Lucy also becomes curious about the figure of Erza, who is said to be the strongest female mage in the Fairy Tail Guild. Lucy thinks that Erza is a woman with a burly figure and has a scary face because she is so feared by Fairy Tail Guild members. Even Natsu and Gray are no exception. However, when Erza finally arrives at Fairy Tail's headquarters, Lucy is surprised to find out that Erza is a very beautiful young red-haired woman and has an attractive physical appearance. Erza turns out to be a young woman carrying the horns of a giant monster, which she said was a souvenir because she had managed to defeat the monster alone. After that, Erza starts to scold some Fairy Tail Guild members who often did bad habits, such as throwing cigarette butts carelessly, drinking beer straight from the barrel, and so on. Erza then asks where Natsu and Gray are. Even though Natsu and Gray always fight, even in front of the master, both of them are afraid of being scolded by Erza, so they pretend to get along and become good friends in front of her. Natsu once challenged Erza when he joined the Fairy Tail Guild for the first time, but she can easily defeat him, so he becomes reluctant toward the witch. Erza then asks Natsu and Gray to join her team and help her complete the mission. Although they don't know in detail about the mission they will carry out, Natsu and Gray immediately agree to help Erza. Seeing Erza, Natsu, and Gray who are in the same team to carry out a mission, Mira Jane also thinks that the three of them are the strongest team owned by Fairy Tail. Long story short, they started their journey by train. Lucy was asked by Mira Jane to accompany Team Erza on the mission, where she would be tasked with supervising Natsu, and Gray would always fight if Erza didn't watch over them. Because Natsu always feels nauseous and dizzy when riding a vehicle, Erza then tells him to sit next to her and makes him unconscious. Erza then tells Gray and Lucy that their mission is to prevent the members of the Dark Guild Eisenwald who intend to cause chaos by using a magical item called Lullaby. Meanwhile, elsewhere, members of the Dark Guild Eisenwald, led by a man named Aragorn, intend to steal Lullaby and carry out their plan. Aragorn tells his men that now is the perfect time to put their plan into action, as the guild masters are gathering and having a meeting. Switch back to Erza and her comrades, where Gray and Lucy then tell Erza that they have met a group of mages who mentioned Lullaby. However, before they inquired further about the lullaby they were referring to, someone deliberately attacked the group of mages and buried them alive. Erza also explains that Eisenwald is a very cruel dark guild, because they only accept jobs related to murder, even though the Magic Council has prohibited missions related to taking other people's lives or causing harm to others. Therefore, Eisenwald was officially kicked out of the Wizard League. Even so, Eisenwald still illegally accepted jobs related to murder to earn a lot of money, because many people are willing to spend a lot of money to kill someone. Furthermore, Erza warns Gray and Lucy about Aragorn, the leader of the Dark Guild Eisenwald, who is notorious for being very cruel and will not hesitate to kill anyone who gets in his way. Not long after, Erza and her companions finally arrived at the destination, but they only realized that Natsu was still on the train when they were about to leave the train station. Meanwhile, on the train, Natsu, who is still asleep, is surprised by the appearance of one of the Eisenwald members, a man named Kageyama, who bullies Natsu because he is from the official guild. Natsu immediately wakes up from his sleep and prepares to face Kageyama. At the same time, Erza pulls the emergency brake lever to stop the oncoming train. Because the train stopped suddenly, Kageyama accidentally dropped a flute skull shaped with 3 eyes, and Natsu had a chance to see it before they got into a fierce fight, while Erza rushes after Natsu by driving a car powered by her magical power. In the end, Kageyama chose to run away just before Erza arrived at the place. When finally reunites with his friends, Natsu tells them that he had fought with one of the Dark Guild members Eisenwald who had kidnapped Happy. Natsu also tells about the three-eyed skull flute dropped by Kageyama in the middle of their fight. Upon hearing that, Erza becomes annoyed with Natsu and slaps him for letting Kageyama escape because he is a member of the Eisenwald Guild, which was the target of their mission this time. However, Natsu defends himself by saying that he didn't know about their mission at all because Erza knocked him out during the trip. After hearing Natsu's explanation, Lucy was reminded of the explanation of lullaby that she read in a magic book some time ago. She then explains that lullaby is a tool for murder by the curse, which means that it curses the target and causes them to die. Lullaby is capable of producing an enchanted, genocidal song that sucks out the souls of anyone who hears its tune except for the caster. Knowing that Eisenwald would soon carry out their plan, Erza and her companions rush to follow the Eisenwald Guild members to Ashibana Station before they use lullaby to kill many people. Meanwhile, in the town of Clover, Makarov is seen chatting with other guild masters at a meeting. Shortly afterward, Makarov received a message sent by Mirajane, informing him about Erza, Natsu, and Gray, who had formed a team to carry out a mission. Instead of feeling happy or proud, Makarov looks very shocked and worried because if Erza forms a team with Natsu and Gray, then it is certain that they will create a big mess, which can destroy a city. While Erza and her companions chase the guild members Eisenwald, Kageyama finally arrives at Kunugi Station and hands lullaby to Aragorn, who was waiting for him there. However, Aragorn later gets furious with Kageyama for having someone else see the flute, so he cuts a few of his ears with his scythe as a punishment. Erza and her companions finally arrive at Ashibana Station, which had been closed due to the reason that a train derailed, making it difficult for other trains to enter the station. However, Erza doesn't necessarily believe that, because she already knew that the Eisenwald Guild members had taken over Ashibana Station to carry out their plans. Erza and Gray rushed into the station, while Lucy had to carry Natsu, who was still weak from sickness, while riding in the car driven by Erza. Inside the station, they see several royal soldiers who had been massacred by the members of the Eisenwald Guild, and when they went deeper, they finally came face to face with the members of the Eisenwald Guild. Erza asks what Aragorn is planning to do, with Aragorn replying that he plans to use the broadcasting system of the station to play the lullaby's melody throughout the town. Aragorn claims that those people who will die are simply being punished for their sin of not knowing that some have been revoked of the rights they revel in. After that, Kageyama also tried to attack Lucy, but Natsu, who had fully recovered, finally got up and managed to fend off Kageyama's attack. Aragorn turns out to have other plans with lullaby, and orders Kageyama and the Eisenwald Guild members to fight Erza and her comrades. Seeing Aragorn running away from that place, Erza immediately ordered Natsu and Gray to go after Aragorn, while she would stay there with Lucy to face the other Eisenwald Guild members. Erza and Lucy engage the lesser members of Eisenwald, with Erza displaying her mastery at Requip. Erza later shows off the true abilities of her unique magic, the Knight, by being able to quickly change into different weapons and armor, and simultaneously use them against the Eisenwald mages. Lucy helps her out by summoning the giant crab, Cancer, to battle, hoping to leave a good impression on Erza. They manage to take out almost all the remaining members in an instant. Meanwhile, Natsu and Gray continue their search. However, the two grumble about it being impossible to work together and decide to part ways when they reach a split path. Gray searches for the broadcasting room, only to find no one there. As he looks around, however, one of the Eisenwald mages, Rayul, attacks him, but Gray manages to evade the attack. Back at the station, Erza goes out to the balcony to confront the growing crowd, so she yells for them to leave, revealing Eisenwald's true motives. Upon hearing the news, the crowd immediately disperses. Soon after that, a very strong wind starts blowing all around the station. During the fight, Rayul destroys the broadcasting equipment, much to Gray's confusion. Rayul then reveals that they never intended to play the lullaby at the station in the first place, as they simply used it as a trap for them. He adds that Aragorn's wind wall has probably been already set up, preventing them from leaving the station. Rayul continues to attack Gray while gloating that they'll kill the guildmasters who are at Clover Town, where Aragorn's heading. However, this only proves to anger Gray, who promptly grabs Rayul's face and freezes it, vowing that they'll stop them and make them regret trying to mess with the guildmasters. After defeating Rayul, Gray rushed to Erza and told her about Aragorn's real plan, which turned out to be using lullaby to kill the guildmasters who were having a meeting in the town of Clover. However, even though they knew about Aragorn's real plans, Erza and her comrades were unable to leave Ashibana Station to stop Aragorn because Aragorn's wind wall had locked them up. Erza then tells Gray that they must find Kageyama, who is the only Eisenwald wizard who can eliminate Aragorn's wind wall. Meanwhile, Natsu continues to rampage around the station and look for Aragorn until he gets ambushed by Kageyama and his shadow magic. The two have a brief fight, with Natsu overpowering Kageyama and defeating him. The noise of their fight attracts the others to their location. Upon seeing Kageyama, Erza points her sword at him and demands him to dispel the wind barrier. As Kageyama is about to surrender, he gets stabbed from behind by his fellow guild member, Karaka. Angered at his lack of respect for his fellow members, Natsu quickly takes Karaka out, while Gray and Erza try to heal Kageyama. They manage to patch his wounds, but the attack leaves Kageyama unconscious. Erza and her comrades head back to the lobby of the station where Natsu tries to get through the wind wall but fails. Natsu then remembers what happened at Everlu's mansion when he was able to teleport to another location by passing through the celestial spirit world. Lucy tells him that it's impossible as there are no celestial spirits outside the wind barrier for that plan to happen. Happy then suddenly remembers what he wanted to tell Lucy earlier, revealing the Virgo's gate key to her. At first, Lucy thinks Happy stole it, but he tells her Virgo herself wanted Lucy to have it since Duke Everlu was arrested after the Daybreak incident. When Lucy puts down the offer, Happy tells her that he thought Virgo's diver magic could help them get out of the barrier because she could dig a hole underground for them to escape. Lucy quickly accepts the key and summons Virgo, who has now changed into a more petite and feminine form. Lucy tells Virgo to forget the contract for the moment and use her magic to create an escape route for them. Virgo quickly obliges, creating a path for the fairy tale mages. Natsu also brings along wounded Kageyama, stating he wouldn't feel right if he died after fighting him. Soon after, the team gets outside of the wind barrier but is still miles away from Aragorn. Erza then soon realizes that both Natsu and Happy are no longer with them. Concurrently, Aragorn is using his wind magic to fly over a canyon, leading to Clover where the guild masters are. Just as he sees the town on the horizon, Natsu, flying with Happy's help, slams into him with a kick and knocks him onto the railroad bridge below. Aragorn recovers and the two mages prepare for a battle. At the same time, Erza and her comrades once again use the magic four-wheeler to cross the bridge and bring Kageyama along. When Kageyama asks why they saved him, Gray tells him that life and death aren't always the usual outcomes and that Kageyama as well as the other Eisenwald members should live their lives more positively. The vehicle then nearly swerves off the road due to Erza's low stamina, used up from previous events. She prays for Natsu's success in stopping Aragorn. Meanwhile, Natsu and Aragorn begin their fight. Aragorn knocks Natsu off the bridge with his wind magic, but Natsu manages to change the properties of his flames so they can help him pull himself back onto the bridge. Natsu then rams into Aragorn and kicks him before Aragorn takes the fight to the air and attempts to hit Natsu with multiple attacks. However, when Natsu manages to block and overpower most of Aragorn's follow-up attacks, Aragorn activates his wind magic, rendering all of Natsu's flame attacks useless, and Natsu is easily knocked down by Aragorn. While Natsu envelops himself in flames and is frustrated with not being able to get close to Aragorn, Happy then purposely taunts Natsu, telling him he can't win against Aragorn and that he should leave it to Gray. This comment angers Natsu even more, so he increases his flames, nullifying Aragorn's wind magic. Being vulnerable now, Natsu slams into Aragorn with his fire dragon magic and successfully defeats the Eisenwald leader. The rest of the team soon arrives to see the aftermath of the battle. Kageyama is shocked that their leader has been defeated. Natsu and Gray quarrel a bit on the wind while Erza congratulates Natsu for saving the guild masters. Just as everything seems well, Kageyama suddenly steals the magic four-wheeler and also the lullaby flute and dashes onward to Clover. Nevertheless, fairy tale mages quickly move out to follow him. Night soon falls, and by the time Kageyama reaches Clover, he finds that their meeting is still going and proceeds to play the flute. Before he can do such a thing, though, Makarov interrupts him as he is leaving the meeting. Realizing that Makarov is the fairy tale's master guild, Kageyama asks Makarov if he'd like to hear him play a song on his flute. Makarov is initially suspicious but agrees to do so. Kageyama grins, thinking that he wins, but then after he remembers the words of Team Natsu through the whole ordeal, he finds himself becoming increasingly hesitant. Team Natsu soon arrives and is about to intervene only to be stopped by Master Bob as well as the other guild masters who insist on just watching. Kageyama tries to force himself to play, thinking everything will change once the guild masters are gone. However, Makarov retorts that nothing will change and that they'll still be weaklings. Moreover, Makarov points out the importance of the guilds, places to gain friends that help each other in tough times. Ultimately, Makarov tells Kageyama that one can gain true strength to live strong, by striving and pushing himself every day. These words touch Kageyama, so he drops to his knees, admitting his defeat. The rest of the team comes out and congratulates Makarov, and everything seems to go well once again. However, the flute suddenly comes to life on its own and transforms into its true demonic form. The lullaby proceeds to attack and tries to draw everyone's souls. However, Natsu, Gray, and Erza easily defeat the demon by combining their powers, much to the surprise of the guild masters. Unfortunately, they accidentally end up knocking the lullaby monster onto the meeting site and destroying it in the process. This, of course, angers the other guild masters, so Makarov and Fairy Tail members then make a run for it. A few days later, two mages from the Fairy Tail Guild seem to be looking for Team Natsu and Makarov's whereabouts after they left Clover Town. But the two mages couldn't find their whereabouts at all, so they decided to return to Magnolia and report it to Mira Jane. Meanwhile, after escaping from the other guild masters, Happy decides to lead everyone home. However, instead of reaching Magnolia, he leads them to the Web Valley, filled with numerous canyons and earthquakes, so the group becomes lost. Shortly after, everyone starts to feel hungry, but then Happy notices a pack of winged fishes, which are supposed to be a legendary delicacy. Everyone then decides to fish for some, which turns out to be extremely difficult, as they only manage to catch one, which they decide to let Happy have. Happy immediately starts eating it while everyone looks on hungrily. As they continue deeper into the valley, they stumble into a village but find it deserted. Despite the presence of fresh food, Erza tells everyone not to touch it, saying that they should investigate first because the village is suspicious. While Erza and Makarov are investigating, Natsu and the others try to gather some mushrooms. However, when Happy, Gray, and Natsu each start eating them, they grow a mushroom on top of their heads. Back at the village, Erza and Makarov discover seams on the ground and they hear moaning sounds around the village. The mushrooms on Gray's and Natsu's heads soon fall off and the group heads back to the village. They notice the ground light up along with the buildings that are starting to bend. Makarov then tells everyone to head towards higher grounds. As they do, they observe the buildings turn into strange monsters. Makarov then explains that these monsters are the result of the forbidden magic, which turns inanimate objects into living things. Erza assumes that the village must be a Dark Guild's village because of the amount of evil magic tools she found while investigating. They set these facts aside, though, as Makarov emphasizes the fact that the monsters are alive and therefore can be eaten. Everyone except Lucy then attacks them and uses their magic to cook them to their liking. Afterward, everyone, including Lucy, then takes a bite out of the monster. However, they soon find out that the monsters are disgusting to the tongue and cannot be eaten no matter how hungry they are. Moments later, a magic circle appears again and triggers a destructive spell. Just as they are falling towards it, Makarov manages to revoke the magic circle and reverse the takeover spell that let the monsters take over the bodies of the villagers. Makarov then tells the villagers that he will refrain from reporting them to the council if they promise to never perform such magic again. Nobody, however, knows it was Makarov who dispelled the magic circle, except for Erza, who wonders how he did such a thing. Natsu and his companions then leave to head home, but they are still upset since they're starving. Elsewhere, the Magic Council is having a meeting and discussing the incident involving the lullaby flute. They also mentioned a dark mage named Zaref who is the creator of lullaby. Apart from that, they seem to be quite relieved that the Fairy Tail Guild members were able to defeat the demon form of lullaby, although they also were annoyed that Natsu and his comrades were doing damage again. On the other side, Natsu and his companions finally make it back to Magnolia. Lucy writes a letter to her mother about the recent events concerning Eisenwald and her being part of Fairy Tail's strongest team. When she finishes, she is surprised when she sees a half-naked Gray sprawled out on her couch. After she chastises him for trespassing and stripping, he reminds her that Natsu and Erza's battle is on that day and takes her out to watch. When they arrive at the battlefield, the mages start discussing who is the strongest member of Fairy Tail. Moments later, the fight begins, and Erza changes into her Flame Empress armor. Natsu and Erza begin their fight, but a council messenger interrupts the fight and arrests Erza for recent events concerning Eisenwald that had caused severe damage. The rest of Fairy Tail retreats to the guild and is upset about the recent events, but they conclude they cannot do anything against the council. Natsu, having been transformed into a small dragon and trapped inside a glass, insists that they let him out and turn him back to his original form. Mira Jane and Makarov don't let him out, for fear that he could cause trouble to the council. After Erza's arrest, the Fairy Tail Guild members also wonder why the Magic Council is only taking action now to punish them, even though the mages of Fairy Tail have often caused more chaos and damage than the incident involving the Dark Guild Eisenwald. Lucy also expressed her opinion that there must be a reason behind Erza's arrest. Meanwhile, at the Fior branch of the National Council, Erza is greeted by a thought projection of one of the Magic Council members, a young man named Sigrain, just before she enters the courtroom. They argue shortly and then Sigrain leaves after reminding her to keep quiet about the past for his sake as well as hers. Back at Fairy Tail, Lucy is now taking Natsu's side on the incident, thinking they should leave immediately, but Makarov counters that no matter how fast they go, they won't reach it in time. At the same time, Natsu is still shouting to be let out, but when Makarov asks him if that's what he wants, he quiets him down. Makarov then breaks the glass, and the small dragon is shown to be Makao, who pretended to be Natsu because he owed him a favor. Natsu, however, has already left to pursue Erza. Upon knowing that, the mages panic, but Makarov states that they will patiently wait for the results. Inside the court, Erza's prosecution begins and Erza is found guilty of the charges as witnesses claim that the culprit was an armored female mage. In those same moments, Natsu, dressed as Undertaking Erza, shows up and destroys half the courtroom. They are both escorted to the cells where Erza tells Natsu that the arrest was just a show. She explains that the council only convicted her to make it seem as if they enforced the law and that she wouldn't have been punished. She is momentarily mad at him, but later shows her appreciation for his thoughtfulness. Soon after Natsu and Erza's return from prison, the Fairy Tail Guild is visited by a mysterious masked man, Mr. Gun, who uses his magic to send everybody but Makarov to sleep, although even the guild master begins to feel drowsy. Mr. Gun simply takes a job from the board with Makarov's permission and leaves, lifting his magic spell as he disappears. Afterward, Loki and Gray inform an inquisitive Lucy about Mr. Gun that his strength and his apparent abhorrence of socializing are even being seen. At the same time, a man named Laxus, who is another one of the guild's strongest mages, shows up on the second floor. Laxus states that he has seen Mr. Gun's face and then begins to brag about his strength. When Natsu challenges him to a fight, he taunts the Dragon Slayer into coming to the second floor. But Makarov stops Natsu, stating that only those with his permission can enter the second floor. Later, Mira Jane explains to Lucy that the second floor is where the S-Class requests are posted. The quests are far more difficult than normal ones and can even result in death, which is why only S-Class mages like Erza, Mr. Gun, and Laxus are allowed to take them. Lucy then returns to her apartment, only to find Natsu and Happy exercising there. She tries to make them leave, but Natsu tells her that they are to go on an S-Class job and Happy shows her the job request they had stolen, astounding her. Natsu tries to convince her to join them and show Makarov their true capability, but Lucy refuses to help them in violating the guild's rules. Depressed, Natsu and Happy depart, leaving the request on Lucy's floor. She finds it and spots an additional reward, the gate key to one of the 12 Zodiac celestial spirits. Unable to resist temptation, Lucy chases after Natsu and Happy, eager to join them. The next day, Mira Jane notices the missing request for S-Class. Feels distraught, she informs the master about it. Laxus mentions that he saw a cat with wings steal the request but did nothing to stop it as he thought it was an ordinary thief. The guild quickly realizes that Natsu, Happy, and Lucy are the culprits. Makarov then orders Laxus to bring them back, but he bluntly refuses, so Gray volunteers to bring them back. Natsu, Happy, and Lucy arrive at Hargian town, hoping to find a boat to take them to Galuna Island, the location of the request. But no sailor agrees to take them there, because afraid of its curse. As they ponder their next move, Gray shows up behind them to take them back to the guild, threatening them by mentioning Erza's rage if they refuse. Natsu still wants to continue with the mission and almost gets in a battle with Gray. As they prepare for their battle, they are spotted by the last sailor Lucy and Natsu asked. He calls out to the mages and tells them that he is willing to take them to Galuna Island. Upon hearing that, Natsu knocks out Gray, who is distracted by the man's sudden reversal. Along the trip, Gray, now conscious but restrained by ropes, asks the sailor why he let them on. He introduces himself as Bobo and reveals that he was once an inhabitant of the cursed island. Bobo then shows them his demonic arm and questions their resolve. When Natsu and his team spot the island, Bobo suddenly disappears and, without his guidance, they are swept away by the waves. In the morning, they find themselves washed up on the shores of Galuna with no way to leave. They decide to continue their quest, this time with Gray willing to help. By nightfall, they arrive at the village and are greeted by the chief and the villagers, who show them their problem by revealing their physical deformities akin to that Bobo's. The chief, Mocha, explains that the curse began when the moon turned purple a few years back, and its magic power turned them into demons. At that moment, the moon comes out, and its light causes the villagers to transform into demons. Mocha then adds that they revert to their human forms with the arrival of the morning, but an unfortunate few stay as demons. The villagers are forced to kill them to prevent them from harming others, his son, Bobo, being one such victim, a fact that shocks the team. The villagers then beg them to dispel the curse, but Mocha states that the only way to do so is to destroy the moon itself. Stumped with no solutions on how to execute the request, Natsu and his team turn in for the night and heads out to explore the island the next morning. Suddenly, they are confronted by a gigantic rodent, but Gray easily defeats it. Soon after, they happen upon a temple and decide to investigate. Once inside, Natsu accidentally destroys the floor and they tumble into a hidden cave underneath the temple. Further exploration leads them to a huge frozen demon. Gray, visibly shaken, instantly recognizes it as the demon of disaster, Deliora. But before he can explain further, they hear somebody approaching and hiding. 3 people enter their sight, discussing intruders on the island. Natsu realizes that they are not inhabitants of the island. The strangers then declare that they will purge all intruders, and mention a mysterious ritual called Moon Drip and the name of their leader, Rayday. After the trio leaves, Gray explains that Deliora is an immortal demon that destroyed villages from the northern continent, and was sealed in ice by his former mentor, a woman named at the cost of her life. Gray wonders why the demon, encased in unmeltable ice as it is, was brought to the island and proposes that they remain there until nightfall, as everything seems to be related to the moon. Natsu soon falls asleep while Gray starts to remember his training with Erza. Lucy summons Lyra to entertain them, but the celestial spirit's song moves Gray to tears. He immediately orders them to stop the noise for fear of being caught. As night arrives, they witness purple moonlight striking Deliora and move to search for its source. Atop the ruins, they hide to observe a ritual taking place. Lyra explains that the ritual, Moon Drip, gathers the power of the moon, a power that can dispel any spell including the ice shell. She adds that Moon Drip's mere use on such a scale might be the cause of the island's curse. Their conversation is halted when they spot a masked figure. Revealed to be Rede, he tells his subordinates to destroy the village on the island when he learns of the presence of intruders. Shocked, Natsu and Lucy try to figure out their next move, while Gray seems to recognize the voice of the masked man. Natsu jumps out and challenges Rede's subordinates, but their leader orders them to continue with their task. At that moment, Gray attacks the man with his ice, only to be countered by Rede's ice magic. Gray reveals that he knows Rede, whose real name is Leon. When Leon's subordinates leave, Natsu attempts to stop them but is frozen by Leon. While Happy flies away with Lucy to chase the three, Gray kicks Natsu off the temple to protect him, leaving Gray and Leon to battle alone. Gray immediately berates Erza's senior pupil for trying to mock their master's sacrifice by reviving Deliora, but Leon responds by saying that Gray has no right to say this as he is responsible for her death. Meanwhile, as Natsu storms off towards the village, a pirate ship with Erza on board heads towards the island. She is determined to stop the rule breakers. Gray and Leon begin their battle, but Leon easily dominates with his one-handed dynamic ice make. He mocks Gray's use of both hands while casting his magic and states that, due to Gray's past actions that led to Erza's death, his dream to surpass her one day can now only be realized if he defeats the one thing she couldn't, Deliora. Shocked by Leon's words and overwhelmed with guilt, Gray is easily overpowered by his opponent and defeated. Unsure of the village's whereabouts, Natsu climbs the temple again to get a better view and finds Gray badly injured with no one else around. Natsu carries Gray and sets out for the village now that he knows its location. Meanwhile, Lucy arrives at the village and informs the villagers about everything that has transpired. She then summons Virgo to create a pitfall to capture the enemies. However, Natsu reaches the village before their enemies and is trapped instead, shattering the ice encasing him in the process. As Lucy is shocked to see Gray's injuries, their opponents approach the village by air, riding the giant mouse Angelica, who is carrying a large bucket full of a corrosive substance that they plan to use to destroy the village. When Angelica empties the bucket over the village, Natsu has the residents retreat to the center of the village and then uses his fire dragon's magic to blast the jelly outwards. Although the entire settlement has been melted, everyone is safe in the middle. As the villagers evacuate, one of Leon's subordinates, a young woman named Sherry, rides Angelica, but Lucy manages to jump on and tickles Angelica, causing the three of them to crash. Happy immediately goes after Lucy, while Natsu faces off against Leon's subordinates, Toby and Yuka. At first, Natsu has trouble fighting Yuka, who specializes in neutralizing magic. Finally, he manages to knock out Yuka by delivering a physical punch to his face. He then faces Toby and his paralyzing nails, but easily tricks Toby into paralyzing himself. Meanwhile, Lucy recovers from their earlier forced landing just as Sherry finds her. Sherry immediately attacks Lucy with her doll attack. Lucy counters by summoning Taurus, but Sherry reveals that her magic allows her to control celestial spirits. Taurus turns on Lucy and is about to kill her, but she is successful in performing a forced gate closure magic, astounding her opponent. Lucy then fools Sherry by summoning Plu, who is too weak to harm Lucy when Sherry manipulates the dog. Infuriated, Sherry creates a rock doll, forcing Lucy to flee to the shore. Lucy then summons Aquarius, who is immediately manipulated by Sherry. But Aquarius' attack hits both Lucy and Sherry, as Lucy had known it would. Because of Aquarius' attack, Sherry feels dizzy and is unable to control her doll properly and instead engages in a brawl with an equally dizzy Lucy, who is fortunate enough to win. Before losing consciousness, Sherry calls for Angelica, who prepares to flatten a powerless Lucy. However, she is saved by none other than Erza, who defeats the rat with one slash of her sword. Glad to see her savior, Lucy quickly falls into despair when she realizes that Erza has arrived to bring back the people who went on an S-class mission without permission. Soon after, Happy also finds Lucy and is summarily caught by Erza, who demands to know Natsu's location. Lucy tries to plead with her to allow them to help the islanders, but Erza states that she will immediately take back those who had dared violate their guild's rules. The next day, Gray manages to recuperate. He finds himself bandaged and in a storage part of the village where the villagers moved to after the initial one was destroyed. A female villager directs him to a tent where his friends are. However, upon entering, he finds Erza with a tied-up Lucy and Happy. She explains she was brought up to speed by Lucy and they found the village thanks to Happy. Gray questions where Natsu is but Lucy doesn't know. Erza then declares her intention to find Natsu and leave the island but Gray protests. When Erza remains indifferent to the trouble the villagers were in, Gray vows he's going to finish the job, even when Erza threatens him and points her sword at him. He told her that he had to help the villagers, and Erza grudgingly consigns to help. Surprised, Gray had stood up to her and frees Lucy and Happy. They are happy to continue the job, though Erza reminds the two they're not off the hook. Meanwhile, Natsu has returned to the temple after having fallen asleep in the woods that night. Inside, Toby reports to Leon on Yuka and Sherry's defeat, while Leon's right-hand man named Zalti reminds Leon that the moon drip ritual is nearly complete and it would be bad if someone stopped it now. He also mentions both Natsu and Erza as his opponents. Leon, however, remains confident in his abilities. Impressed, Zalti decides to fight as well. The building suddenly starts to tilt to the side. A section of the floor breaks, revealing Natsu underneath it. Zalti surmises that Natsu tilted the ruins from underground to prevent the moon drip from shining on the ice and unfreezing Deliora. Natsu then attacks by blasting himself into Leon, but it turns out to be an ice clone. Leon creates ice eagles and sends them to Natsu, who counters by blowing out the fire to send him to the ground, then firing flames from his feet to melt the eagles. Natsu then goes into a handstand and spins around, sending fire all around the room before preparing to hit Leon with a dragon's roar. However, Zalti uses his magic to make Natsu go through the floor, causing the blast to miss Leon. Meanwhile, Gray, Lucy, Erza, and Happy make their way to the temple. Gray tells them of Leon's intentions but claims that his mentor, is still alive. In the middle of their conversation, suddenly they are attacked by Leon's subordinates. Erza immediately tells Gray to go to the temple to help Natsu, while she and Lucy would face them. At Erza's prompting, Gray begins to recount what happened in the past. 10 years ago, Deliora destroyed Gray's village. and then young Leon were passing through and found Gray among the wreckage, still alive and swearing revenge against the monster. Took him in and began training him in the ways of ice make magic. Gray made it obvious that he was just learning so he could fight Deliora, while Leon's ambition was to surpass her. Gray headed out to fight him despite Er's protest that he wasn't ready yet. Gray managed to find Deliora but was no match for it. And Leon eventually managed to reach his location, and in the confrontation, Leon was knocked out. Managed to shield both boys from a blast from Deliora, though lost a leg in the process. She told an awakened Gray to take Leon and leave while she dealt with the beast, though she doubts she can stop it. Leon awoke upon hearing this and confronted her, believing her to be the best mage he knows. When she stated that there are stronger mages than her on other continents of the world, he decided to use a spell known as Ice Shell to fight Deliora, attracting the beast to them. Knowing what the spell will do to Leon if he finishes it, froze him in place. However, she agreed with his statement that it is the only spell that will work on Deliora and used Ice Shell herself, showing Gray that the spell turns the user's body to the ice to entrap their target. As the spell was completed, asked Gray to tell Leon she died and encouraged her two pupils to go learn and see the world. Gray could do nothing but call out to her and watch helplessly as her body turned to ice and froze Deliora. Sometime later, Leon came to and asked what happened to her. Gray, respecting his master's final wishes, told Leon she died, who proceeded to blame Gray for her death. Back in the present, Gray manages to break into the temple and the room where Natsu and Leon are fighting. He tells Natsu that he is going to take care of Leon as penance for what happened in the past. Gray assumes the stance for Iced Shell, much to Leon's shock. Gray then demands Leon to take his followers and leave the island. When Leon calls his bluff, Gray starts to activate the spell and tells Leon it's his last chance. Unwavering, Leon refuses and Gray goes to use the spell. However, Natsu rushes in and punches Gray, stating that it is still his fight. Gray yells he has to end it, but Natsu tells him sacrificing himself is the same as running away. Before he can continue, the temple suddenly realigns itself. Shortly afterward, Zalti appears, taking credit for doing the deed. Angered, Natsu chases after him, telling Gray to take care of Leon. Once alone, the two former pupils talk, with Leon mentioning he wasn't afraid of Gray's threat due to the fact his followers would simply melt the ice with moon drip, rendering Gray's sacrifice moot. Gray tries to reason with Leon to give up on the quest and tells him that is alive, explaining what Ice Shell does. But Leon stabs Gray with an ice sword, saying he knew all along but doesn't care. Gray recovers from his wound and punches Leon into the wall, stating that he is done trying to save him. They decide to fight barehanded, without magic, but since Gray is injured, Leon gains the upper hand. However, with pure determination, Gray manages to counter his attacks. Leon gets up, and humiliated, uses magic to attack Gray, who deems this unfair since they agreed to fight barehanded. Leon states that he doesn't care because Deliora will be soon revived. Gray then confesses Natsu's strength, one they should be afraid of. Meanwhile, Natsu continues to chase Zalti, who tries to collapse a ceiling over him. In the caverns where Deliora is, Zalti prepares the moon drip ritual, but Natsu manages to find him and attacks. Natsu states they'll stop them, but moon drip suddenly shines down and pours onto Deliora, melting the ice. It's revealed that Toby is at the top of the temple performing the ritual. Natsu starts to head off to deal with Toby but is stopped by Zalti, who states that he won't let him. Back with Gray and Leon, the two feel the ruins shaking. Leon comments the ritual is near completion. He starts to attack Gray while telling of the trouble of finding and transporting Deliora and studying how to beat him. Gray calls him out on this, commenting how ridiculous it was. Leon manages to get Gray to attack an ice clone of himself and sends an ice snow tiger after him from behind. Thinking fast, Gray traps it with an ice prison. Leon tries to bust out of the prison but finds it won't budge. Gray tells him that one-handed ice molding is unbalanced and he can't use his full power at important times. Gray then makes an ice cannon and fires it at Leon, blasting him into a wall, which finally defeats him. As he falls, Gray tells him that that is what taught them. He then proceeds to freeze his wound, but a roar suddenly sounds around the island, signaling Deliora's release. Gray realizes this and considers using Iced Shell once more. Outside, Erza, Lucy, and Happy hear Deliora's roar and decide to go to the temple to stop the ritual. Meanwhile, Natsu continues to fight Zalti. He is hit by his crystal ball but manages to smash it, only for it to reassemble itself and slam into him once more. Zalti explains that his magic, the Arc of Time, allows him to rewind, stop, and fast-forward time on objects. He fast-forwards the ball and hits Natsu multiple times, with Natsu unable to counter. Natsu, suspicious, asks Zalti for his real motives in joining Leon. Zalti comes clean and states he doesn't believe Leon can truly defeat the beast. He's only using Leon to revive Deliora so he can bring it under his control. Natsu becomes angry that all their motives were just for selfish reasons and continues his attack on Zalti. Zalti tries to collapse the ceiling over Natsu, but he blasts through it and straight for Zalti, hitting him with Fire Dragon's Iron Fist. Meanwhile, Erza finds Toby and knocks him away from the ritual site, but it is too late. The ritual is complete and Deliora begins to fully awaken. Gray manages to reach the area in time to witness its revival. Natsu states they have to work together to beat it. Leon, despite being heavily wounded, crawls to the area as well, still stating he is the only one that can beat it. As he gets to his feet, he prepares to combat Deliora, wanting to surpass her. But Gray knocks him out and once more takes the iced shell stance, figuring it's the only way to beat it. Leon threatens to repeat the ritual if he uses the spell. But before anything can be decided, Natsu steps in front of Gray, stating he'll fight it. He tells Gray that he stopped him before because he didn't want him to die. These words stop Gray from using the spell as Natsu prepares to battle Deliora, who raises his fist to smash Natsu. But before it can bring it down, it suddenly begins to break apart, much to the three's astonishment. Leon then realizes that Deliora was long since dead, having been frozen by her for 10 years, this ice slowly sapping away its life. The ice that was covering Deliora flows into the ocean and Lucy, Erza, and Happy rejoin Natsu and Gray. Gray still believes that is still alive even though she no longer has a human form, and will always watch over her two pupils, hoping they would stop fighting for good. Natsu, Happy, and Lucy start to celebrate the completion of their S-Class mission. But the mood is soured by Erza, who tells them it's not over yet. They may have stopped Deliora, but the curse of the village is still in effect. Gray turns to Leon, who comments he doesn't know, as he never interacted with the villagers nor did they interact with him. He also mentions that in the 3 years they've been doing the ritual, the moon drip never affected him nor his followers, and warns that the village may be hiding something. The group heads out to the village, but Gray stays behind for a while and imparts to Leon that he should join a guild to find a new goal. One of the villagers directs them back to the original village spot, which, much to the group's surprise, has been rebuilt. They soon meet the village chief again, who thinks they were responsible for the restoration of the village. He thanks them and asks once more to destroy the moon. Erza gathers the villagers together and deduces from their explanation that the timing between the appearance of the purple moon and Leon's doing the moon drip ritual for 3 years seems a bit off. She asks the villagers why they never bothered to investigate themselves. The chief answers that it's usually a tradition not to wander away from the village, but they did try to go to the temple to see what was going on. However, they'd always seem to reappear right back at their village. Upon learning that, Erza changes into her giant armor, an armor that increases throwing power, and tells Natsu that it's time to destroy the moon. Erza then explains that Natsu will use his fire magic to increase the velocity of her spear as she throws it to reach the moon and destroy it. The plan goes off without a hitch, but rather than destroy the moon, it seems to break a part of the sky and shatters it. Erza explains that the moon drip ritual had a side effect of leaving residue magic over the island that crystallized and covered it like a dome, which is why it seemed like the moon had turned purple. With the layer gone, the magic wears off, but it doesn't seem to change the villagers back to normal. However, Erza tells the group that that was their true appearance. Galuna Island is an island of demons. The moon drip had affected their memories and not their forms, making them believe that they were human. The sailor from before arrives, revealing himself to be a demon too. In fact, he's the village chief's son, Bobo, who reveals that he had regained his memory, but decides to leave the island as he didn't want to scare the villagers in their confused state. The memory soon comes back to demons, and the village chief rejoices along with the rest of the villagers in the air that Bobo is alive. As the villagers celebrate with a feast, Zalti talks on his crystal ball with Seagrain, who had been watching through it. He asks Zalti why he restored the village, to which he answers it was a favor. Seagrain shrugs it off and comments on Fairy Tail's success, adding that he hopes they won't get in his way. Zalti agrees as he turns into a woman, revealing her to be Altair, another one of the Magic Council members. The next day, Natsu and his comrades prepare to pull out. Erza refuses the reward of the villagers on account that they didn't officially take the job, but at the demon's insistence, so they leave with the golden zodiac key, and they soon set sail with the villagers seeing them off. At Era, Altair arrives and meets with Seagrain. They are both disappointed about Deliora's fate, and it's revealed that the daughter thought dead is Altair. She belittles her mother, but they both think highly of her magic. Altair thinks highly of Natsu too, and Seagrain thinks that for his plan to work, he must get stronger, and he will since he is the son of Igniel. Meanwhile, Natsu and his companions arrive back in Magnolia Town. Lucy is glad for her new key, which is revealed to be Sagittarius. Erza shifts the subject to their punishments, which freaks out Natsu, Gray, and Happy, commenting the master will do the punishment to them, much to Lucy's horror. As they continue through town, they notice the townspeople talking about something. They soon find out what when they reach their guild hall, which has been impaled with metal rods. Informing them about the situation, Mira Jane tells the team that the Phantom Lord Guild is behind the attack. During that time, the guild members are all in the basement, with Makarov welcoming Team Natsu back as if nothing happened. Natsu is upset that Makarov is just ignoring what happened, but Makarov then reminds the group that they went on an S-class job without his permission and subsequently punishing them. Later, Lucy returns home, only to find the rest of her team in her apartment. Erza says that since Phantom Lord attacked, they may know where each of the guild members lives, so it would be better if they stay together. While staying over, they discuss Phantom Lord and their long-term rivalry with Fairy Tail, being equal in power, as both of their guild masters belong to the 10 Wizard Saints. Phantom Lord Guild also has the Elite Element 4 team on par with the Fairy Tail's 4 S-class mages in terms of strength. Besides that, Phantom Lord has a mage named Gajil Red Fox, who is considered to be the guild's strongest member, and a dragon slayer just like Natsu, with his element being iron. In the meantime, the other members of the Fairy Tail Guild, consisting of Levi, Jet, and Droy, are seen strolling through the city when a mysterious man watches them from a distance. The man turned out to be Gajil Red Fox, who was planning something to provoke the Fairy Tail Guild. Afterward, Gajil appears in Phantom Lord's base, eating different metal parts before telling his guild master about his another attack on Fairy Tail, having beaten the team Shadow Gear and crucified them to a tree. The next day, the townspeople and Fairy Tail mages shockingly witness the act. Makarov then arrives on the scene and, now completely serious, says that Phantom Lord has gone too far. As he crushes his staff in rage, Makarov officially declares war between the two guilds. With Lucy remaining in the guild to watch over the injured team, the rest of the Fairy Tail mages attack Phantom Lord's base in retaliation. The Element 4 and Gajil, however, are nowhere to be seen, something that easily grants the upper hand to the invading force. Soon after, the Phantom Lord's Dragon Slayer then shows up, wondering whether he should join the fray. At the same time, Lucy, who has left the guild and is walking through town, is suddenly reached by two members of Element 4, Juvia Loxer and Saul, and, having been rendered unconscious, is kidnapped. Back at Phantom Lord's base, where the battle rages on, Gajil finally joins in and starts fighting Elfman. However, their brief confrontation is interrupted by Natsu, who goes on to fight Gajil himself, and they're involved in a fierce battle as fellow dragon slayers. In the meantime, Makarov has reached the second floor of the building and is ready to confront Jase. However, Phantom Lord's master is revealed to be using a thought projection, with which he also shows Makarov an unconscious, captured Lucy. Shocked by this, Fairy Tail's guildmaster is caught off guard by Element 4's Aria and his Metsu spell, which deprives him of his magic and heavily damages him, forcing Fairy Tail to retreat, carrying their injured master with them. During that time, Natsu learns that Lucy is held captive in Phantom Lord's headquarters, going there immediately after. At the mentioned location, Lucy, much to her dismay, is told by Jase that she's the main reason for the attack on Fairy Tail, as her kidnapping was ordered by her father, Jude Hartfilia, who wants her back. Having soon kicked Jase in the groin by tricking him, Lucy jumps from the high cell she's held in, knowing that Natsu will save her. This proves to be true as the Fire Dragon Slayer catches her before she hits the ground. The two of them then hurry to Fairy Tail, with an enraged Jase saying that he'll make Lucy pay. Back at the Fairy Tail Guild, everyone is readying for a possible confrontation against Phantom Lord once again. Lucy, seeing herself responsible for what happened, is comforted by her comrades. While looking for help from the guild's S-class mages, Kana is unsuccessful in finding out where Misto Gun is, and Laxus, via a communication lacrima, refuses to help his guildmates out, laughing the matter off. Then all of a sudden, all the quiet ends when Phantom Lord's headquarters are seen moving in the direction of Fairy Tail on large mechanical legs. Once they're near enough, Jase, still enraged, orders the firing of the magical convergent cannon, Jupiter. Erza, using her adamantine armor, manages to stop the blast, but is heavily injured in the process. Afterward, Jase demands Lucy to be handed over, but everyone angrily refuses to give up a comrade, and Phantom Lord's master furiously proceeds by saying that Jupiter will be fired once again in 15 minutes. As Fairy Tail members then start fighting against the shades Jase has just summoned, Natsu, with Happy's help, readies to enter Phantom Lord's headquarters and deactivate Jupiter. Lucy, who would like to fight as well, is put to sleep by Mirajane and is entrusted to Redus, who carries her to the guild's secret hideout. Mirajane, though, having taken on Lucy's appearance, readies to act as a decoy. Meanwhile, as Natsu is unable to destroy Jupiter from the outside, Happy advises him to rather attack from the inside, with the former agreeing to do so, entering the cannon itself. This leads the two of them to the chamber containing a large lacrima that is likely empowering the weapon. However, as he tries to destroy it, he runs into Tadamaru, a member of Element 4, who displays the ability to control all the fire in the area, even Natsu's fire. Their fight rapidly reaches a stalemate since Natsu can eat Tadamaru's flames while his flames can't reach Tadamaru. After Natsu then tricks him by spitting on him instead of using his fire dragon's roar, Tadamaru gets angry and decides to use his orange fire, being smelly and, thus, affecting Natsu greatly due to his extraordinary sense of smell. Shortly after, Tadamaru pulls out his sword to attack Natsu, but Natsu manages to dodge and gets a lucky shot by making his flame big enough to attack Tadamaru, even if it's being controlled. Natsu subsequently manages to gain full control over his flames, rendering Tadamaru unable to control them, and destroys the lacrima, preventing Jupiter from being fired anymore. Just as Natsu is then starting to gain the upper hand, Jase decides to use his strongest weapon, turning his guild's building into a gigantic robotic mage, the Super Mage Giant Phantom, which gives Natsu motion sickness due to the building starting to move. As Tadamaru takes advantage of this and tries to finish Natsu off with his rainbow fire, he ends up being frozen in a block of ice by Gray and then thrown up in the sky by Elfman, with two mages having arrived to help Natsu. However, a bigger threat than the Jupiter cannon draws near as the Super Mage Giant Phantom starts casting the Abyss Break. Thus, the members who infiltrated the robot search around for a way to stop it. Mirajane, still donning Lucy's appearance, is shocked to hear that Elfman is among them, being worried for him. To end the suffering of her guildmates, she subsequently shows herself to Jase, claiming to be Lucy, willing to surrender and turn herself in. Jase, however, easily sees through her deception and captures her. As Mirajane is caught by the robot's gigantic hand, Jase claims that he'll crush her for trying to deceive him. In the meantime, Elfman runs into Saul and confront each other. During their battle, Saul keeps bringing up Lysana, Elfman's younger sister, whom he accidentally killed during a failed Beast Soul spell attempt. Despite Elfman's effort to attack Saul, he still gets overwhelmed and decides he has no choice but to try a Beast Soul spell once again. But Elfman fails when he remembers Lysana and receives a massive attack that sends him through a wall afterwards. At that place, Elfman sees Mirajane, who has been captured by the gigantic robotic mage and is on the verge of being crushed. This gives Elfman the reason he needs to succeed in his intent and, thus, he manages to activate his Beast Soul, full body takeover, proceeding to quickly defeat Saul with a barrage of strong punches. Elfman then rushes towards Mirajane and saves her, revealing that he has retained his senses, and that he didn't lose control this time. Regardless, Mirajane doesn't blame him for what happened and reminds him that they both promised to continue living for Lysana's sake, something which makes Elfman cry out in joy. Mirajane then notices that the robot mage is now casting Abyss Break at a slower rate, realizing that the spell is powered by the Element 4, meaning that the spell will be stopped if the remaining members are defeated. While Fairy Tail's members continue to battle, Gray reaches the outside and wonders why is it raining. At that place, he meets Juvia, a member of Element 4 utilizing water. Gray tells her that even if she is a girl, he won't go easy on her. Juvia quickly blushes and tries to walk away saying she has lost, greatly surprising him. Juvia then starts to grow more and more fond of Gray at an impressive rate and decides that she must make Gray hers. Subsequently, she surrounds Gray with her water lock, accidentally opening the wound he got from Leon. As a panicking Juvia tries to release him, Gray frees himself by freezing the water, something which strikes Juvia. Gray, now shirtless, attacks her with his ice make magic, but is surprised to see that Juvia's body is made of water and capable of reforming. Briefly after, Juvia proceeds to say that he should hand Lucy over, but the latter replies that he won't give up, no matter what, something which makes Juvia mad, prompting her to start seeing Lucy as a love rival. In this state, Juvia moves around fast enough to prevent Gray from casting freely, as she even manages to melt his ice shield. With no other choice left, Gray decides to freeze Juvia's own water regardless, and comments that the continuous rain falling on them is depressing. This reminds Juvia of her sad past, when she was always refused and avoided by others because of the rain which has been always surrounding her. Flared up once again, Juvia continues to attack Gray while trying to convince herself that she doesn't need love. Afterward, Gray freezes her water again, additionally freezing the rain itself in the process, ultimately defeating Juvia with his ice geyser. With her defeat, the sky clears, allowing Juvia to see it for the first time, which makes her cry in joy as she states that it's beautiful. Gray then jokingly asks if she wants to continue the battle, but this only makes Juvia faint in a comedic way. With this, the third member of Element 4 is defeated, slowing down the Abyss break even more. Concurrently, Natsu is having difficulty fighting Arya and gets badly beaten by the invisible attacks created by the Arya's airspace magic. Just as Natsu is then about to have his magic drained by Arya's Metsu-like Makarov, Erza arrives just in time to save him and take over the fight. With both of them before him, Arya resorts to use his full power and takes off his blindfold. Now with no more limits on himself, Arya activates his strongest spell, Zero, claimed to be the airspace of death. Arya's easiness to take away human lives enrages Erza, who charges through his spell and slices through it before equipping her Heaven's Wheel armor and defeating him with Blumenblatt. After his defeat, she defiantly claims that there is no way that Makarov could have lost to him. With all of the Element 4 defeated, Abyss Break is stopped and the gigantic robot mage collapses, much to Fairy Tail's enthusiasm. But at the same time, Erza falls to the ground out of exhaustion, with Natsu rushing to her side. Meanwhile, Loki, who realizes that Lucy might be in danger, then rushes to Lucy and Redust's hideout. Arriving there, Loki was surprised by the appearance of Gajil and the Phantom Lord Guild members who had defeated Redust and were about to kidnap Lucy. Loki tries to stop Gajil, but he's easily defeated. After the incident, Redust and Loki feel guilty for not being able to protect Lucy. On the other side, Jase, though, is enraged by the fact that all of the Element 4 are defeated. As he asks for Gajil's whereabouts, his guild's ace appears before him, carrying a beaten Lucy, whom he took away from Fairy Tail's hideout after defeating Redust. A pleased Jase then announces through the loudspeaker that Phantom Lord has succeeded in recapturing Lucy, forcing her to scream in pain as a proof before stating that there's nothing left to do but to eliminate them all. He thus grants a huge boost in power to his shades, which start overwhelming the exhausted Fairy Tail members. Having entrusted the prisoner Lucy to Gajil, Jase readies to personally take care of those who invaded their guild. Inside Phantom Lord's collapsed robot, a downed Erza tells Natsu to save Lucy and the guild and encourages him to use the hidden power inside of him. Upon hearing that, Natsu then rushes to the rescue Lucy. At the same time, Gray, Elfman, and Mira Jane manage to find a worn-out Erza and are glad to see her okay, but then Jase himself arrives and prepares to finish them off. Jase quickly takes out Gray, Elfman, and Mira Jane before proceeding to fight Erza, acknowledging her strength. Meanwhile, Gajil is spending his time throwing knives at Lucy, who is bound to a wall, nearly hitting her a couple of times, much to his comrades' dismay and concern. Lucy then starts lecturing Gajil, defiantly stating that, if something were to happen to her, her comrades would avenge her and make Phantom Lord cower in fear. This prompts Gajil to throw one more knife at her, this time bound to hit her. However, Natsu suddenly shows up, covered in flames, breaking through the wall, saving Lucy and subsequently proceeding to attack Gajil. Two of them then start battling while Happy sets Lucy free of her restraints. Gajil rapidly gains the upper hand due to his Iron Dragon's scales, which drastically increase both his offense and defense. Having exchanged many blows, Natsu's Fire Dragon's roar and Gajil's Iron Dragon's roar then clash. Natsu is injured by Gajil's metal scraps, but, as his opponent mocks him, a cut is shown opening on his iron forehead as well, showing that Natsu did manage to hurt him. The two then ready to fight seriously. As the battle below rages on, Natsu and Gajil appear to be evenly matched, but then Gajil eats some of the metal floor to replenish his stamina and strength before starting to overwhelm Natsu. Lucy, in a desperate effort to get Natsu some fire to consume, summons the only key she has after her kidnapping, Sagittarius, but she's told that he can't produce fire. Gajil then slams Natsu across the wall, throwing him on the ruined hall's edge, where Natsu sees Fairy Tail's building collapse. This makes Natsu reminisce his first days in Fairy Tail, when he got to meet all of his guildmates for the first time and started enjoying his stay. Now on his feet again, Natsu only continues to receive a brutal beating from Gajil. Just as the Iron Dragon Slayer is then about to finish Natsu off, Happy says that Natsu could defeat Gajil if he'd eat some fire to replenish his strength. This makes Sagittarius realize why Lucy asked him if he could produce fire and then states that, while he can't make fire himself, he can help generate some. Standing behind his words, Sagittarius shoots a machine with his arrow and manages to make flames for Natsu. Natsu then rapidly consumes the flames to heal up, thanking Lucy for her help. Gajil then charges towards him, but Natsu, now being able to fight back, overwhelms him. Having struck him numerous times, he uses his Fire Dragon's Fist to finish Gajil off and destroy Phantom Lord's building even further. As the building therein collapses, Lucy and Happy escape through the use of Happy's arrow, with Natsu stating that he'll reach them later due to currently being too exhausted to move. At that time, Erza continues her battle with Jase, but is unable to lay a hand on him, getting easily overwhelmed and then captured by his darkness magic. Jase then states that he left Makarov alive just to have him die in total despair later, after which he proceeds to tell Erza the reason behind the attack on Fairy Tail and Lucy's kidnapping. Jase says that, back when guilds were being set up, Phantom Lord was at the top and recognized all over the country, but then Fairy Tail appeared and started to grow, until its name and members were eventually recognized as equal to them. He then says that Lucy's father gave them a job to retrieve his daughter, but he plans to have her family surrender all of their fortune to him before returning Lucy to him. Erza laughs and says that Lucy is a dear comrade to them, and that his plan will never succeed. Just as Jase is then about to crush Erza, she gets saved in time by the appearance of the newly revived Makarov. Fairy Tail's guildmaster then readies to confront his old rival. Meanwhile, at poor Yusika's place, the old healer looks on angrily, saying that Makarov rushed in like a fool and can get killed. Just then, she notices Misto Gun sitting quietly not far from her, who asks her for apples. She then realizes that the reason Makarov managed to heal so quickly was because the mysterious S-class mage gathered his scattered magic power. She proceeds to lecture him for not joining the battle and helping out his comrades, but then the wind starts blowing and scatters numerous flags with Phantom's emblem on them around. Poor Yusika realizes Misto Gun did more than enough by taking out all of Phantom's subdivisions single-handedly, and, after that, the two remain still, discussing the situation enigmatically. Back at Phantom Lord's ruins, Makarov orders everyone to get away since a fierce battle is about to start, which, in fact, subsequently makes the sky and earth tremble as the two wizard saints clash. Both guild masters manage to injure the other, but then Makarov tells Jase to back down before he counts to 3. He then grows larger and starts the countdown, generating light in his hands, but Jase refuses to bow and insults his opponent. With the 3 seconds passed, Makarov activates his fairy law, prompting a gigantic aura of light to appear on the Phantom Lord's building. The light takes out all of Jase's shades without doing damage to any of the Fairy Tail members. Jase is defeated by the attack, looking like a complete opposite of himself. Just as the victorious Makarov is then leaving, Arya shows up behind him, hoping to deprive Makarov of his magic again, but, this time, Fairy Tail's guildmaster notices and defeats Arya with only one punch. He then leaves, telling Arya to take his master away with him and disappear before he changes his mind about not informing the Magic Council. With that, the war between Fairy Tail and Phantom Lord finally comes to an end, with everyone cheering and Lucy joining her guildmates. Elsewhere, in the meantime, Natsu and Gajil have one final chat and they manage to learn that both their dragons disappeared on the same day and thus wonder if there is some connection. Shortly after, however, just as Natsu is starting to leave, Gajil swears revenge, something which Natsu doesn't care about. Back at the destroyed Fairy Tail Guild building, where the whole of Fairy Tail is gathered, Lucy feels guilty for what happened to everyone, but the Team Shadow Gear, having recovered, appears and tells her that she is not to be blamed. The Master then tells them that the war was not caused by anyone and that Lucy is a member of Fairy Tail, and, thus, a member of their family, making Lucy cry tears of emotion and joy. Just as everyone is then about to celebrate, Makarov remembers that he will likely be reprimanded by the Magic Council for overdoing things, starting to cry as well. Following the end of the war, the Magic Council's army arrives to learn about what happened. A few days later, all the guild members start reconstructing their building, with Natsu and Grey continuing their usual competitions and Juvia secretly spying on the latter. Loki then returns and asks Natsu to return Lucy her keys, which he managed to find. At the same time, Lucy reports the whole event in a form of a letter to her mother, after which she thinks back to the strained relationship with her father. Afterwards, Natsu, Grey, Happy, and Erza arrive at Lucy's house, but find out that it's empty. Happy then opens up a cupboard and a bunch of letters fall out. Everyone notices that the letters are all addressed to her mother, and then find a note saying that she is going home, making them think she is leaving Fairy Tail. Right at that time, though, Lucy is on a train. Briefly after, she arrives home where all the servants greet her with a teary welcome, being glad that she is safe. Having then been dressed up formally, Lucy finally confronts her father, who coldly welcomes her back, reprimands her leaving and speaks about her arranged marriage. But Lucy stops him and tells him that she just came back to say that she's leaving her family for good, and that her true family is Fairy Tail. Moving on, Lucy states that, if her father does anything to their guild or her friends again, he will be considered her enemy, as she wants to stay in a place where she is respected for who she is. She then leaves and pays a visit to her mother's grave to lay flowers. She is surprised to see her teammates there, who have been following her. She proceeds to clear up the misunderstanding and says that she only came to visit her mother after so long. Astonished to see how much land her family owns, the mages soon leave Lucy's former residence. Elsewhere, Makarov's trial is taking place, but he falls asleep in the middle of it. The Magic Council then soon reaches the decision that Fairy Tail is innocent. Jase is stripped of his title of Wizard Saint, and Phantom Lord is disbanded, being an active guild no more. Makarov then meets up with Yajima, one of the counselors as well as an old friend, being one of the main reasons behind the good outcome of the trial. Yajima says that he can't keep protecting Fairy Tail from every accusation and that Makarov should consider retirement. Back at the guild, everyone is glad to learn that they can do jobs again, but the mood is ruined by the return of Laxus, who shows off his arrogance by insulting Shadow Gear and Lucy, referring to them as weaklings. Lucy then learns from Mira Jane that Laxus is the grandson of Makarov and probably the reason for which Makarov is putting off his retirement, so Laxus won't take over the guild with his current attitude. Erza then says that now Natsu, Gray, Lucy, Happy, and herself should take on a job as a team, having accomplished many missions together. Everyone then instantly cheers as Team Natsu is now official. At night, Makarov wonders about his retirement, but can't find a suitable successor, as none of the S-class mages are suitable for the position yet. Just then, he receives a notice from Mirajane saying that Team Natsu destroyed a town while on a mission, realizing that he won't be retiring for quite some time. Afterward, Lucy laments on having no money and being unable to afford her monthly rent again. Just as she starts losing hope due to her teammates' destructive natures, Mirajane provides her with a simple job to advertise a play in a nearby town. Lucy excitedly takes the job and sets out with her teammates. However, upon arriving at the site, they find out that the cast has run away and the play consequently cancelled. Erza instantly volunteers her team to replace the cast, thus giving them a new job. After a week of practice, the play opens with a revised cast, Erza playing the role of the prince, Lucy a princess, and Gray as the villain. Initially, Erza is excited at this theater opportunity, but she develops massive stage fright at the opening night. However, she is able to overcome her stage fright for the battle scene with Gray as their respective roles. Later, Natsu arrives in a dragon costume on the set whilst being carried by Happy, but Happy accidentally drops him and Natsu accidentally engulfs the stage and Lucy in flames. Still performing her role, Erza then slashes Lucy's costume and begins fighting both Natsu and Gray. The fight results in a destroyed theater but a surprisingly pleased audience. With the play as a major hit, the manager makes them perform multiple acts in a single day, leaving everyone anxious to return home, except for Erza, who is still enjoying the job. Team Natsu then takes a new job which involves subduing some thieves, which they manage to complete in a much shorter time than expected. With the rest of the day free for themselves, they spend time together in a nearby village. The members meet Loki by chance, but he flees from the group upon seeing Lucy, keeping up with his behavior towards her. Later that night, Natsu suggests a pillow fight with his teammates which ultimately gets out of hand, destroying the hotel room which they are spending the night at. Feeling exhausted, Lucy takes a walk with Plu since she cannot compete with her teammates. Along the way, Happy plays a prank on her and she is ultimately subdued by two criminals who try to kidnap her, though fortunately Loki is able to save her. For his actions, Lucy refuses to let Loki leave without thanking him, so they go and have a drink. Plu and Happy see them together, thinking that they are now a couple. While drinking at a bar, the two mages have a short conversation which quickly ends with Loki abruptly hugging Lucy, telling her that he doesn't have a long time left to live. Loki quickly laughs it off afterwards, saying it is a joke he uses to get girls. Furious, Lucy slaps him and leaves. Upon returning to the guild, Natsu and Gray are covered in bandages from their pillow fight and start arguing over who won. They try getting Lucy to decide for them, but she icily shrugs them off, still upset with Loki's previous actions, scaring and silencing the two men. Shortly after, all of Loki's girlfriends arrive at the guild wondering where he disappeared to, as he suddenly broke up with all of them the previous night. Curious, Lucy then decides to investigate Loki's situation. With Crux's help, she discovers that he once had a relationship with Karen Lilica, a famous celestial spirit mage from Blue Pegasus who died a few years ago. Shortly after, Gray arrives at her apartment telling her that Loki has left Fairy Tail. She joins the search for him, thinking she knows where he went. She manages to find Loki at Karen's grave and reveals that she knows the truth behind him and Karen. Lucy then explains that Karen was formerly his summoner and that his real identity is Leo the Lion, one of the 12 zodiac celestial spirits. Loki confirms this and reveals that he was exiled from the celestial spirit world for the crime of killing Karen Lilica. He proceeds to elaborate on his past with Lucy. A few years before, Loki, then known as Leo, was one of Karen Lilica's celestial spirits. As a prominent mage of Blue Pegasus, Karen was corrupted by her fame and became very conceited and arrogant, especially towards her celestial spirits whom she treated more like tools than living things. One day, while being followed by an entourage of lustful men, Karen summoned Ares to entertain them all in her place so that she would not have to deal with them herself. Despite Ares' discomfort regarding the task, she was forced to complete it by Karen. The guild master, Bob, witnessed the event and warned Karen not to treat her celestial spirits so poorly, otherwise she would suffer as well. But Karen interpreted Bob's words as Ares telling her off to him. While in her home, she summoned Ares and sentenced her to staying in the human world for 7 days as punishment, despite the fact that the act would likely kill her. Before Karen could do so, Leo suddenly changed places with Ares and gave Karen an ultimatum: sever her contract with him and Ares or lose her opportunities to work with other celestial spirits in the future. When Leo proved that he could not be sent back by his summoner, as he came of his own accord, thus preventing Karen from summoning others, he left to the nearby ruins and told Karen to come and find him once she met his demands. However, Karen stubbornly refused to give in. After 30 days, she pleaded with him to return to her, promising not to mistreat Ares anymore, though she has refused, for Leo was able to see through her deceit. Angered, Karen attacked Leo and proclaimed that once he died, she would summon Ares and treat her 10 times as worse before leaving him. After 3 months, Loki found that while his vitality was still draining, he could live in the human world much more bearably. He decided to go forgive Karen, only to discover that she had gone on a mission and ended up being killed. Hearing this, Loki was overcome with guilt and subsequently blamed himself for her death. After finishing his story, Loki begins to fade away from existence from his overextension in the human world, but Lucy refuses to let him die and tries to think of a way to open his gate. Desperate, Lucy attempts to open Loki's gate forcefully and nearly merges with his life force, which would make her disappear as well. Loki pleads for her to stop, saying he doesn't need to be saved, but Lucy refuses and officially declares her wish to change the rules of the celestial spirit world for his sake. Suddenly, the celestial spirit king appears before them, much to their shock. He reminds Lucy that despite Loki not breaking the rules directly, he still caused Karen's death and is not allowed to return to the celestial spirit world. Lucy stubbornly argues that Loki should be allowed to return for all of the suffering that he has endured. Though the celestial spirit king agrees, he states that he cannot break the rules and therefore cannot save even his own friend. With her will and determination, Lucy summons all of her zodiac celestial spirits and Pluto stand by her decision, an astonishing feat considering that most celestial spirit mages can only summon one at a time. The feat proves to be too tiresome for Lucy already, as she collapses from the life-threatening action while her celestial spirits disappear. Seeing her resolve, the celestial spirit king decides to make an exception and allows Loki to return to the celestial spirit world due to Lucy's resolve to save him. Loki initially refuses due to his sin against Karen, but is told to live and fight for his allies as a means to atone for it. As his gate then opens, he sheds his tears and thanks Lucy for her help and support. He expresses relief at being able to move on from the past and gives her his key, thus forming a contract with Lucy. The next day, Lucy summons Loki and lets him explain to the others about his past and reasons for leaving the guild. After finishing his explanation, Loki provides Lucy and her friends tickets to a luxury resort which they gladly prepare to leave for. Afterward, Loki gives Team Natsu tickets to Akane Resort, so they head off for a vacation. Upon arrival, Natsu, Gray, Lucy, and Happy first decide to enjoy the beach, while Erza unwinds in her room and drifts off to sleep. Erza dreams of her childhood horrors at the Tower of Heaven where she worked as a slave to build the R system. She hides in a corner and cries as Jello Fernandez's voice whispers to her that freedom is just an illusion. Erza then wakes up and looks at herself in the mirror. She changes back into her Heart Cruise armor thinking it fits her personality better, before Lucy comes in the room and tells her to get dressed to go gamble at the casino downstairs, where the others are already present. Erza then changes her clothes into a rose-patterned dress and heads out. At the casino, Natsu gets angry when he loses a roulette game. As Gray plays at slots, Juvia reveals herself and admits that she decided to tag along. Natsu starts complaining again, when suddenly, a block-headed man named Wally Buchanan appears and tells him how to enjoy himself in an adult place, to Natsu and Happy's surprise. Wally then points a gun to Natsu's head, while everyone in the casino starts running in horror. Meanwhile, Gray and Juvia discuss her leaving the Phantom Lord Guild and becoming an independent mage, as well as her interest in joining the Fairy Tail Guild. Just then, another man named Simone appears in front of them, swatting Juvia aside and demanding to know where Erza is. At the same time, Erza is playing a card game when suddenly one of Erza's childhood friends, Sho, comes in to rotate dealer positions. Erza stares at Sho, shocked to see him. Sho remarks how it's been a while since they last saw each other, but Erza is still surprised to see that Sho is safe. Meanwhile, Simone asks Gray about Erza's whereabouts a second time. Juvia suddenly appears ready to attack in her water form, intending to protect Gray and buy him some time to go find Erza. At that point, Simone gets told, through his headpiece, that Erza has been found, so he uses his Dark Moment spell to blind Gray and Juvia and escape. While in the dark, Natsu gets shot in the mouth by Wally, and a bang is heard throughout the casino. When the light reappears, Sho is gone but reappears behind Erza and shows her his magic card by displaying the trapped people inside his card deck by his card conversion spell, remarking that he learned to use magic too. At the same time, another of Erza's past friends, Miliana, a cat-like woman, meows and uses her Nekisoku tube to grab Lucy, despite Erza's protests about Lucy being a friend. Sho finds this remark insulting, saying that he thought they were friends too, until Erza betrayed them. Wally then reanimates himself to where Sho and Miliana are and tells Sho to calm down while also complimenting Erza's beauty. Simone also appears as Lucy falls to the ground with her hands and feet tied. Lucy asks Erza why they are all calling her sister, and she replies that they are old friends, which triggers Wally to point his gun at Lucy, much to Erza's shock. Wally reanimates his hand behind Erza and shoots her with a sleeping bullet instead. As Simone grabs Erza, Lucy struggles in her position to get Erza back, but Miliana remarks that she'll be cat food in a few minutes. Sho then exclaims that Erza will be returning to the Tower of Heaven, where Jello is waiting for her arrival. After Erza and her former friends leave, Lucy tries to summon Cancer but fails to reach her keys when she is suddenly poked by a knife belonging to someone inside of Sho's cards. He ends up cutting the ropes for her and the man is rewarded with a kiss. Once freed, Lucy runs over to Gray, but when she touches him, his body breaks into pieces, freaking her out until it turns out to be an ice clone. Juvia then gets up and lets Gray out of her water body, where she was hiding him, getting a freaked out reaction from Lucy. Gray sheds his shirt and asks where Natsu is, but then Natsu's signature flame breath appears in the distance, before he starts yelling about how it was rude for someone to shoot inside his mouth. Natsu runs out of the casino, wanting revenge on Wally, with everyone else following, since Natsu has a keen sense of smell and can lead them to Erza. Meanwhile, at the Tower of Heaven, Jello sits on his throne as one of his subordinates. Vitaldus Taka walks in, reporting that Erza was successfully captured. Jello laughs to himself and tells Vitaldus why he didn't kill Erza, which was because Erza was going to be the sacrifice to the tower. On Sho's ship, Erza is tied to a pole, and while everyone else is asleep, Sho visits Erza and she demands to be released, but Sho refuses to oblige. She then struggles to get free, but Sho tells her it's futile because Miliana's ropes conceal magic, but Erza corrects him, saying she just wants to equip her armor back so she can feel more secure. Sho tells her that she looks nice in what she has on, and then he hugs Erza, telling her he never wanted to do all this, but it is her fault for betraying Jello. Erza then reminisces her old friends and her escaping, worried about getting captured and potentially tortured, and that Jello was the one who gave them the courage to carry on. At the same time, Gray, Juvia, Lucy, and Natsu travel by canoe to the Tower of Heaven. Gray thinks they're lost and Natsu is sick from the transportation as usual, though they are all counting on his nose. Juvia expresses her surprise that Erza got defeated, which irritates Gray as he refuses to accept that she lost, until Lucy tells him to calm down since they don't know much about Erza. Soon, they see the tower ahead of them and continue sailing towards it. Upon arrival, Natsu and his companions think there are too many guards to just walk in, so Juvia recommends they go through an underwater entrance she found. She produces water helmets to give the mages oxygen while underwater, and after they go through and reach the ground. Guards then spot Natsu and his team, but they are easily defeated, and then a door leading to the inside of the tower opens for them. Meanwhile, inside the tower, as Erza arrives, she is thrown in a prison, which triggers her to remember her monstrous past. Despite the fact that it was Sho who had the idea, Erza accepted the punishment trembling with fear, but also smiling, to assure the others that she was not afraid. Now in the same prison again after years, Sho tells her she will stay there until the ceremony starts the following day, in which she will be the sacrifice for paradise. Upon learning Sho's true plan, Erza tells Sho not to use the R system to resurrect the Dark Mage because of the consequences it will bring to the magic world. The Tower of Heaven, or the 8th Tower of the Resurrection System or R system, is a magic item that allows any person to restore life upon someone who is deceased at the cost of someone else's life. For protection purposes, the construction of the tower has been forbidden by the Magic Council since ancient times. However, Sho is adamant about his plan, believing that Jello will bring them to paradise and that they will all rule together. Erza then brings Sho to his knees by kicking him in the face and changes into her Heart Crew's armor, determined to find and fight Jello. Concurrently, the Magic Council reacts to the news brought by Seagrain that the R system still exists. They remember shutting down the R system projects, but other members point out there was an 8th tower they must have missed and that now it is almost completed. Seagrain interrupts the conversation saying the name of the 8th tower is the Tower of Heaven, while the others tell him to shut up and organize an army to take it down. They don't have enough information to do that, but they do know that a cult leader, Jello, is in control of the tower. Everyone is still arguing about what should be done, until Seagrain says the tower is way too dangerous to let it stand and recommends using Etherian. Almost all the Magical Council members initially refuses, claiming the Etherian is their ultimate weapon and is even more powerful than the R system. But Altair agrees to use it, so Seagrain begs for 3 more votes to let the chaotic weapon be used. Meanwhile, Happy wakes up in Miliana's room surrounded by stuffed cats and cat pillows, and he starts looking for Natsu. Miliana asks Happy how he is, and he shocks her when he reveals his ability to talk. Simone then comes in to tell Miliana and Wally that Erza has escaped, much to Happy's surprise that she is somewhere close. Simone tells them she's probably going for Jello and they all set out to find her. In the throne room of the tower, Vitaldus worries about the Magic Council's actions. Vitaldus then asks Jello why he is letting enemies enter. Jello just claims that everything is a game to him and that they just passed a level. In the meantime, once Natsu and his companions get in the room, Lucy changes into the clothes that Virgo gave her. More enemies start running towards the group until Erza shows up and fights her way through them, asking about Jello's whereabouts. Although surprised to see her friends at first, she then tells them to go back and that this is her problem to deal with, but Natsu refuses, as they have even abducted Happy. Erza decides to tell her friends everything she knows about the R system, meanwhile reminiscing that when Jello was captured, she and the other slaves decided to fight for their freedom, starting a rebellion, but by then, Jello had completely changed. 10 years ago, a cult tried to build a tower to resurrect the fearful and terrifying dark mage Zeref by using the R system, also known as Tower of Heaven. They used slaves to build it, and Erza happened to be one of them along with Wally, Sho, Miliana, Jello, and Simone. After an escape attempt, Erza was taken to the dungeons and was tortured with such severity that she lost her right eye. Her friend Jello arrived to save her and told her they had to fight to survive, but then was caught by another guard and received a beating, while Erza was sent back to her prison. After that, Jello was possessed by what he believed was the dark mage Zeref, which greatly altered his former kind personality to a more violent one, making him almost completely insane. No longer able to take the abuse, Erza attacked the guards and started a revolution which at its inception appeared to be successful. The sudden presence of mages, however, began to dampen the slavers' chances at victory, and all seemed lost the moment a magic blast came towards Erza, until Rob, another slave that was forced to work on the R system and has fairy tale tattoo on his back, interfered, saving Erza, but sacrificing his life while doing so. To see Rob, who had nurtured her in the manner of a grandfather, blown to dust in an attempt to save her life seemed to unlock something inside of Erza, and she awakened her magic. In a vengeful fury, she manipulated all kinds of weapons and tools like pickaxes and shovels in her proximity and sent a barrage of steel at her captives. In that moment of rage, she ended the revolution, defeating all her enemies. While the others went on the boat to go home, Erza went back in the dungeons to look for Jello. Already possessed by Zeref, Jello attacked Erza, telling her he was going to complete the R system to resurrect Zeref's body in order to find his true freedom. Jello easily finished off the guards who were torturing him, despite Erza's attempts to stop him, and even attacked Erza herself with darkness magic. Erza remembers Jello telling her not to tell anybody about the tower or he would kill everyone, and she then woke up on another island, crying about the events she had just witnessed. Back in the present, Erza wipes her tears in front of her friends, and claims she will be the one to face Jello. Erza then tells her friends about Zeref and how the R system is being used to resurrect him. She explains that he was the cruelest and most powerful dark mage in history, and also the creator of Lullaby, and probably Deliora. Suddenly, Sho appears, having overheard everything Erza said, furious about Jello manipulating him and his friends, since he told them all that Erza planted bombs in their ships and that if Jello hadn't noticed, everyone would have died. Jello then made everyone get back to work on the tower, claiming it was a sign that the tower must continue to be built. Erza assures Sho she would never do that, confusing him. Simone then approaches the group, revealing that he knew Jello was lying all along and that he always trusted Erza, who then comforts Sho saying she was too weak in the past but is stronger now. Then they all decide to work together and stop Jello. After finally arriving at Miliana's room, Natsu tries on a cat-themed costume head but soon finds himself stuck. When Wally tries to ambush him again, Natsu is saved by Miliana, who believes that he is a real cat and doesn't want Wally to hurt him. Natsu is nearly killed again when Wally points a gun at his head, but Miliana stops him once again. Wally convinces Miliana that he is not, in fact, a cat, and the two attack in tandem, but Natsu is saved by Happy this time. Natsu ends up defeating both mages by using a move dubbed by him to invoke Miliana's pity and make her release him from his bonds, allowing his magic to return to him and beating them with a single attack using his fire dragon's wing attack. Jello then tells Vidaldus that Simone and Sho have betrayed them, but that he doesn't mind since this is also part of the game. Vidaldus just tells Jello to hurry up with the ceremony, but he gives the former the job of fighting for him instead, with Vidaldus awakening his true form, and his allies, Fukuro and Ikaruga, appearing alongside him. Jello then announces that it's their turn to move. Afterward, Jello uses magic to send an audio to everyone in the tower, telling them that it's time to begin the Paradise game. The rules are to try to prevent him from using Erza to resurrect Zeref, and that they must get past Vidaldus, Fukuro, and Ikaruga to get to him. He then lets everyone know that the Etherian will also hit them soon and destroy the tower, so they have an unknown amount of time and that they could potentially all die. An angry Sho claims that he will protect Erza and defeat Jello, so he uses his magic to trap Erza in one of his cards and runs, with Simone following him. After hearing this, Natsu and Happy are excited to be part of the game, but instead decide that it would be easier to cheat. They fly straight to the top, but are soon stopped by Fukuro, who makes them fall to the ground. When they land, they end up being with Simone, who tells them to run away from Fukuro. Simone uses his darkness magic to help them escape, but since Fukuro is an owl, he manages to see Simone in the darkness and beat him. Simone, defeated, tells Natsu that Fukuro is a member of Trinity Raven, a team that belongs to Death's Head Caucus, a guild that takes care of assassination jobs, which enraged Natsu, who now prepares to fight the other mage. Somewhere else, Juvia and Lucy wander the tower looking for Natsu, but soon they are attacked by one of Trinity Raven's members, Vidaldus, who seems to be obsessed with rock music. Juvia fights him for a while and seemingly traps him in her water lock, but his hair absorbs the water much to Juvia's surprise. Vidaldus then utilizes his magic and decides to turn Juvia into his slave. With no control over her actions, Juvia attacks Lucy with her water magic, while Lucy tries to reason with her, to no avail. Juvia attacks Lucy a couple of times, while Vidaldus states that if he turned both of them into slaves, things would become boring. However, Juvia's real consciousness reaches Lucy, telling her that she doesn't like hurting her friend, considering her one despite the fact that she also sees her as a love rival, and that she has come to love Fairy Tail, thinking that she has finally made friends. Lucy feels Juvia's hot tears and sadness inside her water. When she gets out of the water, Lucy decides to settle things, summoning Aquarius using Juvia's water body. Upon being summoned, Aquarius begins attacking everyone, including Lucy. Somehow, Lucy and Juvia join hands as Aquarius attacks, and they perform Unison Raid to defeat Vidaldus. Unison Raid is an extremely powerful ability that allows two mages to unite two kinds of magic similar in nature together, thereby creating an even stronger attack. While they celebrate their victory, Aquarius throws a tantrum, scolding for the way she summoned her. Juvia tells Lucy that she defeated Vidaldus, to which Lucy corrects her, stating that they both defeated him. Since both of them are tired, they decide to rest for a while and regain their strength. Meanwhile, Jello expresses that he is impressed with the two girls, because a lot of people tried to use Unison Raid in the past, only to fail, but then deducts that this is to be expected out of Erza's friends. Meanwhile, Natsu and Fukuro send attacks back and forth, with Natsu determined to win this battle despite his opponent's advantage. Natsu faces trouble as Fukuro launches his missile to get a hold of him, resulting in his motion sickness kicking in, which Fukuro takes advantage of and, amazingly, eats Natsu. Happy tries to attack Fukuro, but the assassin, unfazed, uses Natsu's fire magic to bring Happy down, revealing that he is able to absorb the magic of the mages he eats. Upon learning that, Happy tells Gray that Fukuro has eaten Natsu, and Fukuro explains that in around 10 minutes, Natsu's body will dissolve. Gray decides to take the matter into his own hands and attacks Fukuro, but since he has absorbed Natsu, he uses Natsu's fire magic to counter Gray's ice magic. The arduous fight between Fukuro and Gray continues, with Gray still under Fukuro's fire, until he manages to freeze the flames and tells Fukuro that they can't be Natsu's, as they are not as powerful as the original ones. Fukuro is impressed with Gray's magic, to the point that he wants to capture Gray as well. During the fight, Gray remembers his younger days. Once, Kana talked about how Erza was always by herself. Afterward, Gray found Erza sitting alone and he immediately challenged her to another fight, but then saw her crying. Instead of challenging her, he asked her why she was always by herself, and she replied that she liked being alone and did not feel comfortable around others, to which Gray angrily responded that she should not be all alone and crying. Back in the present, as Fukuro attempts to attack him, Gray freezes his mouth and says that they don't have time to play around. With all these memories powering up Gray, he finishes Fukuro off with his powerful ice magic. At the same time, when the remaining members of the council reject the idea of using Etherian, Seagrain resorts to revealing that Jello's aim is none other than to resurrect the Dark Wizard Zeref, pointing out the gravity of the situation. The council is shocked at the revelation and asks Seagrain to tell them everything he knows. Afterward, the council votes again, with 8 in favor and 1 against Seagrain's proposal, resulting in the Etherian being now approved of. Yajima, who is against it, asks Seagrain if he's ready to accept the consequences of firing it and all the death he is about to cause, with Seagrain replying that he is. Meanwhile, 27 minutes remain until Etherian is fired. One of the Magic Council members, a mage named Org, thinks that they may have made a mistake in firing it. But another member states that they need to take full responsibility when it comes to maintaining order in the magic world, and that they absolutely must not allow Zeref to be revived. At the same time, Jello tests Altair's resolve and loyalty, and then mentions that if Etherian fails, they would probably all die. Unbeknownst to them, Yajima is eavesdropping on their conversation. Back in the tower, Sho keeps looking for Jello and still has Erza trapped in his card. He runs into the final member of Trinity Raven, a female mage named Ikaruga, who proceeds to greet him. Sho attacks, telling her to move out of the way as he is not interested in fighting her, but she cuts through all his attacks. Ikaruga then attacks Sho while Erza tries to tell him that he is no match for her. However, Ikaruga attacks Erza, managing to slice through the card, with Erza defending herself. Fortunately, Erza successfully manages to break free out of Sho's card, having Ikaruga to thank for that. She then tells her opponent that she should move out of her way, but, surprisingly, Ikaruga destroys Erza's Heart Crew's armor. Sho notices that now Erza is serious about fighting Ikaruga, shortly before she changes into her Heaven's Wheel armor. However, Ikaruga destroys that armor too. Erza's opponent attacks her again, using a flame attack. Erza then requips rapidly into the Flame Empress armor to defend herself. Nonetheless, this armor is quickly destroyed as well. Ikaruga praises Erza's ability to use requip so fast, and she suggests that Erza uses her strongest armor, and she obliges, deciding to use the Purgatory armor. Before Erza manages to do anything in that armor, though, Ikaruga destroys it in an instant, telling Erza that no matter what armor she wears, she won't stand a chance against her blade. Erza stands on her feet once again and requips into a long, winding strip of cloth wrapped tightly around the midriff up to the chest, with flamed bottom long hikama. Both Ikaruga and Sho think that this is not a particularly strong armor, but Erza replies that she is weak, and that's why she wears her armor all the time. But she does not need it anymore, because now that she has met Fairy Tail, the armor keeps the warmth of those people away. She then declares she will defeat her opponent. Preparing for one last attack, both Ikaruga and Erza launch one final attack with their swords clashing for the final time, and although it looks like Erza has lost at first, Ikaruga is actually the one to fall. Before Ikaruga loses her consciousness, she tells Erza that both her and Jello would lose because there were 15 minutes left until the firing off of the Etherian. Erza orders Sho to find Simone and take her friends from Fairy Tail out of the tower, and that she is going to settle things between her and Jello. Meanwhile, Natsu finally wakes up, and does not remember what happened to him aside from getting caught by the missile, which made him get sick. Simone yells at him for that, telling him that Fukuro ate him and Gray saved him, but Gray took a lot of damage, so he told Happy to take him outside of the tower. Simone also tells Natsu that he got a message from Wally and Miliana according to which they found Lucy and Juvia collapsed, and that they were taken outside the tower as well. He adds that Erza and Jello are destined to battle, but Jello is simply more powerful, so Simone begs Natsu to save Erza, which he easily refuses to do. Natsu tells Simone that he shouldn't underestimate Erza, but he replies that Erza won't bring herself to kill Jello and that he is clever enough to take advantage of that. Simone tells Natsu that Etherian is about to fire, and if that happens, every person in the tower will die in 10 minutes. Simone speculates that Erza might take advantage of Etherian to die and take Jello down with her. With the idea of his friend's suicidal plan making, Natsu becomes furious and asks Simone where Erza now is. At the same time, Erza finally makes it to the top of the tower where Jello is. She decides to delay Jello enough until Etherian fires, but Jello tells her that she will die, as becoming Zeref's sacrifice is her destiny. Jello and Erza begin their fight, with Erza hoping to keep Jello busy until Etherian is fired. Jello uses his darkness magic against Erza, hitting her, but she manages to break out of it once more, slicing Jello in the process, who is surprised to see his opponent pinning him down on the ground. Erza keeps wondering what Jello is after, and speculates that something as big as the R system would probably need tons of magic power to be activated, but Jello coldly reminds her that in a few minutes, Etherian will be fired. Erza gets angry and wonders whether he means to die, but Jello tries to make her give up by saying that his body has been possessed by Zeref and that he is nothing more than a doll doing his bidding. Back in Era, Etherian finishes charging and all the Magic Council members pray. Meanwhile, outside the tower, in the escape boat, Happy sees the light, hoping that Natsu and Erza can manage to get out of there in time. At the tower, Jello confesses that he knew he could not finish the R system, but Zeref would not let him stop. He asks Erza to strike him down, but she refuses, and hugs Jello as Etherian is about to hit the tower. Upon Ithurian finally hitting the tower, an ominous smirk appears on Jello's face. Outside, the tower is seemingly destroyed and the escape boat that Lucy and the others are aboard gets caught in the waves until Juvia protects them using her water magic. However, both the mages and the council members are shocked to see the tower still standing, with Lucy speculating that everyone inside it must still be alive. Back at the tower, Simone is surprised that he is still alive while Natsu wonders what just happened. Meanwhile, Erza realizes that Jello tricked her. Indeed, he explains that the true form of the tower is a giant lacrima, and thanks to the council's attack, he succeeded in gathering the power he needed to resurrect Zeref. Back at Erza, everyone demands explanations from Seagrain, with Yajima yelling at him as he teleports away. Much to Erza's surprise, Seagrain teleports to the tower and unites with Jello, proving to be the same person, as well as a ploy of the latter to manipulate the council into firing Ithurian. As the two merge, Jello states that his powers have come back to him. In Erza, everyone wants to know what happened, and the headquarters starts to crumble, with Yajima witnessing Altair using her magic to destroy the council, saying that Jello's dream has finally been realized. Back at the tower, Erza tries to fight Jello, but he easily dodges her attacks, stating that thanks to Altair, his plans have finally been realized. Jello then reveals that he used a bind snake to bind Erza's movements, which he planted on her when they hugged, and that all he needs now is Erza as a living sacrifice, whose body will be composed and decomposed into Zeref's new body. Thankfully, Natsu arrives just in time to pull Erza out, not intending to let her die. Erza then tearfully pleads with Natsu to leave and not to fight Jello because she is afraid of the consequences, but Natsu is confident that he will win. Natsu then knocks Erza unconscious as he turns his attention to Jello, who asks him if he enjoyed striking his friend who couldn't even move. Natsu replies that she was not herself and that he will defeat Jello to bring the old Erza back. During the fight, Natsu has the upper hand at first, attacking Jello several times using his flames. However, Jello states to be disappointed in Natsu's strength and then proceeds to attack Natsu. Since Natsu can't keep up with Jello's meteor spell, he tries to predict his movement but fails to do so. Afterward, Jello attacks Natsu using his Grand Chariot, which causes huge damage to both Natsu and the tower, with Jello regretting that action and saying to himself that he should not risk Zeref's resurrection by further damaging the tower. However, Natsu hears that and starts attacking the tower directly, claiming breaking things to be Fairy Tail's specialty and that he is more fired up than he has ever been before. As the battle continues, Erza wakes up only to see Natsu getting beaten by Jello's meteor again. Natsu taunts Jello, angering him even more when he hits the tower again. Angered by Natsu's actions, Jello launches another attack on him, but Erza shields Natsu and asks Jello if he is going to kill her as well, since she is actually needed for the resurrection ritual. Intending to protect Natsu, Erza prepares to take the attack head-on, but shockingly, Simone gets in front of both of them to protect them. Simone confesses his love for Erza and then dies in her arms, causing Erza to cry and scream in sadness. Enraged with Jello laughing at Simone's sacrifice, Natsu punches him in the face out of rage and then starts eating the giant lacrima, managing to absorb it and reaching the Dragon Force level of his Dragon Slayer magic for the first time. After a fierce battle between an enraged Natsu who has reached Dragon Force and Jello shouts that he cannot be defeated and that he must bring freedom because Zeref chose him and he was going to build the Kingdom of Freedom. However, before Jello is able to launch the attack, he feels the aftershock of a slash Erza gave him during their fight before and his magic fails. Natsu sees an opening, telling Jello that he will never achieve freedom by taking away other people's freedom away and that there is no freedom to someone who is possessed by a ghost and he should free himself first. Natsu charges at Jello's chest, punches him as hard as he can and then finishes him off with a huge smash to the ground, which leads to Jello's defeat, impressing even Erza with his strength. Afterward, Natsu faints out of exhaustion, but Erza quickly embraces him to prevent him from falling. At that moment, the tower starts to get out of control, and Erza takes the unconscious Natsu and runs, hoping to find an exit soon. However, she then realizes that the tower has strong magic power and that it won't be stable for long, also speculating that it will soon create a massive explosion capable of killing even the people outside. Erza announces she is not going to give up and it's now her turn to protect Natsu, realizing that she needs to be sacrificed in order to control the tower to prevent it from exploding. She puts her arm in the liquefied lacrima, which still works, only for Natsu to wake up and see Erza's half-body into the lacrima. Natsu pleads with Erza to stop what she is doing, but she says that this is the only way to save all of them and that she has no regrets as long as she manages to save them all. At the same time, Lucy, Gray, and others notice that the tower isn't exploding but is pouring magic power straight into the sky instead. Erza remembers back to when Makarov was taking her to Poryusika in order to fix her damaged eye. After adding a new artificial eye in place of Erza's lost one, Poryusika urged Erza to leave from her house, until she saw Erza crying from one eye only, which she said she would fix. However, Erza told her that it was okay and that she had already shed half her tears anyway. Out of nowhere, Erza finally wakes up in a white dress. Wondering where she is, she sees a scene of her funeral, with every member of Fairy Tail attending it. Makarov delivers a speech saying that she was like a daughter to him, and during the funeral, the council members also appear and award Erza a place as a member of the 10 Wizard Saints. The funeral is shortly cut by an angry Natsu who says there is no that way that Erza died, refusing to accept the facts, kicking the flowers on her tombstone with everyone in Fairy Tail pinning him on the ground. Seeing Gray, Lucy, and Happy's sadness over her loss and mostly Natsu's anger and denial affects Erza and makes her cry, saying she didn't sacrifice her life to give them a sad future and that this is not the future that she wanted to see. She closes her eyes as she slowly fades away from the vision to reality. Suddenly, Erza wakes up and doesn't know where she is. She sees Lucy, Gray, and the others running towards her relieved that she is fine, and she then realizes that she is alive and notices that Natsu is carrying her, who somehow not only found her but also managed to take her out of the vortex alive. Natsu then tells Erza they are the same and that she should never do something like this again. Touched by his words, Erza promises not to risk her life again as she embraces him and gives him a genuine thanks. Back at the hotel, Natsu has been sleeping for 3 days straight. Wally, Miliana, and Sho apologize to Erza, and she tells them that since they don't have a place to go, they can join Fairy Tail. While she takes them to introduce them to her teammates, she hears Jello's voice telling her that she has become really strong. She starts and turns around and sees nobody, deducing that she heard nothing after all. The next day, Lucy is in her room, while Erza enters the room and asks Lucy where Sho and the others are. When Lucy seems to not know either, Erza tells her to tell Natsu and Gray to prepare some fireworks. While Sho, Wally, and Miliana decide to go on the journey to discover the outside world, Erza prepares for them the Fairy Tail farewell ceremony. She bids them farewell and promises that they will meet again as Natsu, Gray, and Lucy throw magnificent fireworks for them. Erza's friends set off on their own journey, finally free to live their own lives. This is the end of the first part of the anime.